Imagine a 10-year-old bride getting hitched for the first time with a father-in-law already demanding grandkids. Two literal children forced into the bridal suite and locked inside. And for the first time ever, our protagonist Elisa was scared out of her mind. Let's rewind 7 years. A car crash ended a woman's life only to shove her soul into Elisa's body, a minor background character in a novel who also happened to be the mother of the story's future sub-villain. In the original plot, young Elisa lost her parents way too soon and grew up in the Duke's cold mansion, completely starved of human warmth. Desperate for love, she clung to her husband like superglue, probably annoying the heck out of him, until he finally snapped and ended her with a sword. Elisa wasn't about to go out like that. She had 10 years before that fatal moment, so she just needed to rewrite her destiny before then. When she first met the Duke, he didn't mince words. He wanted a granddaughter-in-law, implying she was useless while dripping with misogyny. Seriously, do guys realize how easy they have it, compared to women, using work as an excuse to party, then coming home just to bark orders, taking all the credit like they own the world? Just as she was fuming internally, the Duke slapped a contract on the table. Sign here. Staring at the marriage papers, Elisa didn't hesitate for a second. She grabbed the pen and inked the deal. As long as she didn't produce an heir or obsess over her villainous hubby, survival was in the bag. She could chill in the Duke's mansion and walk away with a massive settlement after the divorce. You'd be an idiot to turn down a golden ticket like that, right? The thought pumped her up, scanning the young Duchess's luxury bedroom. Her jaw hit the floor. Elegant decor, a closet bursting with haute couture. This was the high society life. She flopped onto the bed on cloud 9, but thoughts of the husband she hadn't met yet kept creeping in, ruining her sleep. As the future father of the side villain, her husband Riart only existed in the novel's flashbacks. Even though Elisa knew the plot, she had zero clue about his actual personality. She just knew the original character remembered him as absolutely terrifying. She silently prayed he'd never show up. Finally, exhaustion took over and she drifted into a deep slumber. Unexpectedly, the creak of the door at midnight jolted her awake. She rubbed the sleep from her eyes. A black-haired boy was stomping toward her, looking absolutely ferocious, radiating a vibe that screamed, "Don't mess with me." The kid barely reached out a hand, and she was already trembling, clutching the duvet for dear life. Getting a good look at her, the boy sneered with pure contempt. "You're so tiny, I almost missed you." He spun around to bail, only to find the door locked tight. It happened so fast he questioned reality. The kid started banging on the door, cursing and grumbling up a storm. Elisa was petrified, but the gears were turning. This angry kid was her husband Riart. Suddenly, a gust of wind blasted through the room. Seeing the vortex swirling around him, it clicked. This was the power of Luberlin, the ability to manipulate wind at will. Only those with Luberlin blood could inherit it. And right now, Riart was losing it. Grinding his teeth, he swore to beat up whoever locked them in, but it was all bluff. The boy whipped around, glaring at Elisa with glowing red eyes. Seeing that chaotic crimson gaze, she dove under the covers at light speed. She thought her life was over, but surprisingly, the kid just flopped onto the sofa to chill. Even though she was terrified, she wanted to be polite. After gathering every ounce of courage to introduce herself, he completely ghosted her. She just stood there, feeling salty. She didn't get his vibe, but one thing was clear. The kid had zero manners, true to form. Early the next morning, her tiny husband ignored her again. Tradition dictates that on day 1, newlyweds should greet the elders and eat breakfast together. But her husband, Riart, ditched her at the crack of dawn. He went straight to the Duke and threw a massive tantrum, demanding an annulment, but he was doomed to fail. To the Duke, the kid was just a tool for breeding heirs. If he didn't do his job as a successor, he could kiss the title of young Duke goodbye. The threat was real. Not only was the annulment denied, but because he skipped breakfast with his wifey, the Duke chewed him out right in front of Elisa, insisting they share a bedroom. Eyes blazing with fury, he drew a line in the sand. Absolutely not. Little did he know, the harder he pushed. Better get out now before things get ugly. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the hinges rattled, leaving Elisa alone in the silence. The Duke summoned her just to hand over a massive doorstop of a book titled The Virtues of a Wife. Spoilers, zero useful content inside. She politely excused herself, but inside, total doom and gloom, life was looking pretty bleak. Forced to memorize this archaic nonsense, talk about bad vibes, and this was just level 1 of her misery. Night fell and the maids practically dragged her back to the lion's den, aka her husband's bedroom. No way out of this script. She poked her head through the doorway, scanning the room like she was entering a boss battle. Surprise, surprise. Richard was chilling with his feet up on the sofa. Seeing that little act of rebellion sparked a smirk on her face. Thinking back to the daytime drama she witnessed between the old man and his grandson, it was clear the Duke only saw Richard as a breeding stud to continue the bloodline. Richard hated it. And you know the rule, the enemy of my enemy is my bestie. She slid into the room, hitting him with a dazzling smile. "Hey there, young Duke." She dropped an alliance offer that sounded way too good to pass up. But homeboy completely missed the signal. He looked at her like she was background noise. She had to physically restrain herself from slapping some sense into this rude brat. Instead, she grit her teeth and chirped, "Good night. He's her meal ticket after all. Gotta win over the hubby to unlock the divorce ending." From then on, it was a daily grind. Wedding etiquette, check. Duchess training, double check. She even had to sit through ancient lectures on wifely obedience. Gag me. But her progress bar with Richard stuck at 0. He kept his distance, waging a silent war from his fortress on the couch. This was getting old. She let out a dramatic sigh. "Just sleep in the bed, all right. I promise I don't bite." Richard side-eyed her, clearly searching for the polite way to say, "Get out." Before he could object, she reached out a tiny hand. "Come on, we'll just hold hands. Scout's honor." She even tried the oldest line in the book to get close. Big mistake. Her tiny husband looked at her with pure disgust. It didn't matter if she gave an Oscar-worthy performance or actually cared. He read everything as a trap or a direct order from the Duke. Elisa froze. No matter how she spun it, his walls were up. She knew the family drama was intense, but yikes, she was just a homeless orphan that the Duke plucked from the streets to play granddaughter-in-law. But explaining that backfired. Apparently only villains drop their tragic backstories first. Richard was not buying it. Elisa was shook. This kid had trust issues the size of the castle. She only agreed to this marriage because, well, starvation isn't a vibe. She wanted a better life. But this kid was stubborn as a mule, convinced she was the Duke's puppet. Talking was useless. If soft words fail, it's time to drop some hard facts. She recalled the original plot. 4 founding families controlling wind, fire, water, and earth. Back in the day, they had a battle royale to decide who'd run the empire. It came down to the Luberlin clan, masters of wind, and the Caro family who wielded fire. Both wanted the crown. Caro took the win and became emperor. But to keep them from turning into tyrants, the Luberlins were sworn in as the ultimate check and balance. But history gets blurry. Over time, everyone forgot the deal. Now the powered-up imperial family wants to absorb the Luberlins' magic, and this arranged marriage is the perfect trap. If Richard didn't marry the princess, the seat next to him had to be filled by someone. Elisa put a hand over her heart and got real. "Look, I don't want your babies or your title. Once I'm an adult, I'm out of here. But until then, I need you to play along." Richard thought his wife was just a naive kid. He didn't expect her to know the deep lore. He took the deal, making sure she swore on her promise to leave. That proud little attitude was about to get wrecked, though. Cut to midnight. The space behind him started feeling suspiciously soft. He was enjoying the warmth until his brain sent a danger signal. His eyes snapped open. His wife was wrapped around him like a koala. He spooked like a startled stray cat. "You said just holding hands. Why are you glued to me?" In the chaos, a pillow hit the floor. But who cares about pillows? He was clinging to the absolute edge of the mattress. He wanted to rage, but her soft mumble of, "I'm cool, old," disarmed him completely. Defeated, he reached out a claw and gently pulled the blanket over her. "You are so much trouble." The next morning kicked off with Elisa burying her nose in a book, enjoying the peace and quiet. But something caught her eye. A tiny toddler, maybe 5 years old, was hustling hard, scrubbing floors and serving tea at the crack of dawn. She was even teetering on a ladder, trying to wipe down chandeliers way out of her league. One slip and she would be toast. A single kid doing the grind of 5 adults. Yeah, that screams toxic workplace and major abuse. Elisa strolled over with a sweet smile, but inside, she was fuming. Her suspicion was spot on, and she was ready to throw hands. The actual maids were ditching work to go goof off, dumping everything on this poor tot. They were literally teaming up to bully a child. After comforting her new mini bestie, Elisa smirked. "Oh, it is absolutely payback time." She marched straight to the Duke's office. No beating around the bush. She hit her benefactor with a direct request, asking for a favor. "I need a new personal maid. My current one, useless. She can barely make a bed, let alone assist me." After getting him to listen, she played the innocent, clueless girl card perfectly, spilling all the tea on what she saw that day. The Duke wasn't born yesterday. He knew she was plotting, but he couldn't ignore the facts. He ordered an investigation. He needs her for his plans, so he can't exactly toss her aside. Elisa seized the W. She got the lazy staff fired and realized she could totally exploit the Duke's attachment to get whatever she wanted. As long as she kept it low-key, she was golden. But when she asked to study finance, the Duke shut that down fast. He wasn't having it. So Elisa had to pull the ultimate ace up her sleeve, claiming she only wanted the classes to spend more quality time bonding with her husband. The Duke's eyes lit up. He is desperate for great-grandkids. Hook, line, and sinker. Elisa was confident she could secure that bag now. She burst into the study like she owned the place, only to find Riart looking at her like she was gum on his shoe. "What are you doing here?" When he heard his little wife wanted to help him work, he claimed to be moved. But his face screamed total annoyance. Then cough, the white-bearded tutor signaled that class was in session. The teacher wasted no time tossing Elisa a quiz. "Here, calculate these numbers on the abacus." Simple two-digit math, easy. But complex three-digit calculations on an ancient calculator? That is a total nightmare for a newbie. You don't just pick up abacus skills in one lesson. Luckily, her villain husband decided to be a hero for once. He grabbed her hand, patiently guiding her fingers through the correct motions. Total main character energy. The tutor was practically cheering in the background. Elisa whispered a shy, "Thank you," and while Riart tried to act cool, seeing his wife's adorable smile hit him like a truck. It touched his soul and started melting his icy heart. It was Elisa who had to remind him, you are still holding my hand." He snatched his hand back like he had touched fire. His face turned tomato red. I wasn't helping. I was just reviewing. He tried to gaslight himself, but his actions were already trending on the down bad scale. He couldn't stop sneaking glances at her. After class, Riart flip-flopped again. Elisa was buzzing and invited him out. She wanted to buy him delicious cookies as a thank you. His response, a total scoff. "Cookies are for toddlers," he mocked. Elisa was so ticked off, her face matched her red hair. Back in his room, Richard tried to read, but the thunder outside had him on edge. Spring season means monster season. With those things lurking around, he couldn't focus on a single word. "What a pain," he muttered. Despite his sharp tongue, he grabbed his cape, hopped on the windowsill, morphed into a bat, and took to the night sky like a gothic superhero. Meanwhile, his little wife was vibing with her maid Annie, completely unaware of the danger. She had secured the cookies and was on cloud nine, already daydreaming about opening a bakery once she divorced this guy. But reality hit hard. Boom! The carriage shook violently and flipped over. Cookies went flying everywhere. Elisa didn't even have time to scream. The stench of death was suddenly very real. A grotesque monster was clinging to the carriage, banging against the frame. Thud! Thud! Elisa and Annie huddled together, terrified, thinking this was the end of the line. But suddenly, Richard dropped in like a dark angel, eyes glowing with pure, murderous rage. He stared down the beast. He summoned thunder and rain, whipping up a massive storm vortex that crushed the atmosphere. In seconds, that monster was fried to a crisp, smelling so like barbecue that it was almost confusing. Watching his wifey comfort the trembling maid, something in his chest actually softened. His arm was literally bleeding, but did she notice? Nope, it's like she's a totally different person. But when he heard she wanted to say thanks, the guy couldn't hold back a smirk. "What's a cookie-munching kid gonna do for me?" He tried to act cool, but honestly, he was just embarrassed. That same night, right after the monster attack, a letter dropped from the Emperor, an invite to the Grand Hunt. Sketchy, but we all know the truth. He just wanted to scope out the girl who snatched the princess's spot. And maybe take her out. Everyone knew it was a trap, but the Duke, he cares too much about his rep to say no. 2 weeks of brutal travel later, they hit the capital. No rest though, it's showtime. Can't look weak in front of the sharks, right? The maids decked Elisa out until she looked like a porcelain doll. Stunning, classy, absolute main character vibes. But then she spotted her husband, and wow. She was fangirling internally. He definitely saw her, but he just whipped his head away like, "Do I know you?" She was too busy thinking how rude to notice his bright red ears. But things got awkward in the carriage. Riart was staring at her like she had 3 heads. She thought, am I just glowing today? Time to flirt. Staring because I'm cute. Spoiler alert. Nope. She literally had something stuck on her face. He plucked a thread off her, and she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. Panic mode. Change the topic. So the princess and the crown prince. Mentioning them was a mistake. Riart went 0 to 100. He called them trash. Actually worse, non-recyclable garbage. She stepped out, grabbing her grumpy husband's hand, thinking, if he thinks they're toxic, they must be straight-up villains. Then she looked up, the way the nobles were glaring at her. Yeah, she got it now. Just because she's from the South, they whispered hillbilly, and shoved her into the cheap seats at the table. She wanted to throw hands, but even at 10 years old, a duchess has to keep her cool. Luckily, her husband isn't useless. Mr. Arrogant actually knows how to defend his territory. He sat right next to her. When the trash prince tried to start drama, Riart shut it down, ice cold. Where my wife sits, I sit. He didn't care if they called him whipped. But the kids barely settled in before the clown show started. Someone poured a massive glass of red wine, and the crown prince strutted over. He accidentally dumped the whole thing on a silver-haired kid's head. The whole room cracked up. Elisa was seeing red. Since the moment they walked in, that prince and his sister had been terrorizing everyone. Can't even eat in peace. Her husband was right. They really are trash. 0 hesitation, she grabbed a napkin and started cleaning the poor kid up. Big mistake. Now the target was on her back. The crown prince. He smirked, calling her so kind while lifting another overflowing glass, said he needed to welcome his new friend. The wine was midair when bam, a freak gust of wind blasted the room. Dust flew everywhere, blinding everyone. When it cleared, the prince was the one dripping wet, soaked in red wine. He lost it, screaming at Riart like a rabid dog, spit flying everywhere. Guards had to hold him back from catching a beating. Even while being dragged out, he kept yapping. Just leave already, dude. Elisa rolled her eyes. Riart stood up to leave, and she skipped after him, all smiles. She wanted to say thanks for the wind save, even though he'd never admit he did it. Doesn't matter. She had to say it. Thank you, hubby. Riart literally froze, glitched out. Then he spun around and speed walked away without a word. Elisa thought, great, I annoyed him. She missed his beet red face again. Back at the party, Elisa claimed her dress was dirty. To skip the toxic tea party, she grabbed her maid Annie and hid out in a quiet grove. Bad timing. She walked right into a conspiracy. Shady guys discussing a hit on the young Duke Luberlin. Her husband, panic set in. She almost ran for the royal knights. But wait, what if the emperor sent them? She couldn't trust anyone here. She paused. She had to find her own family's guards. Elisa took off running for her life. Drenched in a cold sweat, she couldn't believe it. These knights were laughing in her face, treating her warning like some bad joke. Since these two idiots weren't picking up what she was putting down, she dropped the nuclear option her backer, the Duke. If the young Duke, the only heir, gets hurt, do you really think you'll make it out alive? You don't have to answer to me, fine. But you swore a blood oath to House Luberlin, didn't you? She didn't wait for a response. Elisa snatched the reins, zero hesitation. Launching herself onto the horse, she galloped straight into the dark woods. Yeah, plot armor meant her husband should survive, but her gut was still twisting in knots. She was an anomaly in this world. Her presence changed the script, so relying on the original story was a gamble she couldn't take. Suddenly, a gale-force wind slammed into her way, stronger than nature intended. She knew right then, Riart was in the thick of it. Arriving at the scene, she froze. Her husband was tearing through dozens of assassins like a one-man army. He was crushing them like bugs. The other kids watching were absolutely paralyzed with terror. But Elisa wasn't awestruck. She was terrified for him. The second the slaughter stopped, she moved. She sprinted to his side before anyone else could react, eyes locking onto the dark crimson stain spreading across his waist. Wrapping her arms around Riart to support his weight, she hauled him home for immediate treatment. Thankfully, the damage wasn't critical, but the drama was just starting. Annie the maid came in, shaking like a leaf, stuttering out a dark secret she'd overheard. The mastermind behind the hit, the Duke himself, his own grandfather, put a bounty on his head. Elisa's mind raced. It made no sense, especially with all the high society nobles parading through the mansion that day. Was he just using his grandson as a punching bag to flex Luberlin's strength? The sheer cruelty made her tremble with rage. That explained the icy glare the Duke gave Riart when he collapsed. Elisa swore Annie to secrecy, but her mind was at war. She was torn. If Riart knew the truth, he'd ditch the dukedom immediately. That meant goodbye to her luxury life. But she couldn't just sit back and enjoy the perks while he suffered in the dark. So the moment his eyes opened, she dropped the bomb. Shockingly, Riart didn't flinch. He was ice cold. Like this was just another Tuesday. Turns out this wasn't his first assassination rodeo. Born as an illegitimate child, he was nothing but a stain on the family honor to the Duke. If Riart wasn't so sharp, he would have been 6 feet under years ago. He only got the heir title because a tragic carriage crash took out the Duke's son and daughter-in-law a year ago. That's the only reason they dragged him back. He was just a breeding tool to them. So he made a vow he wouldn't just survive. He'd burn this entire bloodline to the ground. Hearing his tragic backstory shattered Elisa's heart. He was just a kid carrying the weight of the world. Suddenly, the original character's death made perfect sense. Being used as a human puppet for heirs. Riart was never going to accept that fate. She grabbed his hand, squeezing tight. I'm with you, always, no matter what. She was a beam of sunshine piercing through his darkness. In that split second, Riart was completely hooked. But the romantic vibes got crushed fast. An uninvited guest showed up, Ansel, the guy they saved at the banquet. Riart watched his wife smiling brightly at another dude. Hadn't she just pledged her undying loyalty to him? And now she's having a private chat with this guy while he's stuck in bed. The jealousy hit so hard he forgot he was even injured. He practically vaulted out of bed. Marching over to his wife, he addressed the guest with zero manners and maximum attitude. But when he felt Elisa's death glare, he quickly switched tactics and feigned dizziness. Elisa sighed and ushered the guest out, insisting she needed to get Riart back to bed. Honestly, she was fighting back laughter at his obvious jealousy. Ansel wasn't giving up that easy, though. He slickly handed over an invitation, hoping to catch Elisa at the next gala. Riart looked like he swallowed a lemon that night before lights out. He dropped heavy hints that she should ghost that guy. But his petty attitude just earned him a scolding. She even brought up the trash. Crown Prince and Riart instantly felt like he was being compared to garbage. Despair hit him. You literally said you were on my side. He looked at his wife, who was totally playing dumb, and he was speechless. Her expression was practically screaming. Why are you being so dramatic? Riart buried himself under the blankets, ignoring her goodnight. But in the dead of night, he poked her cheek. Whispering softly, look only at me. The possessiveness was off the charts. Yet by the next morning, he was back to being the Ice King, sitting silently in the carriage like nothing happened. Elisa stood there feeling totally confused. After her husband's meltdown last night, she honestly thought he'd just ghost the event. Maybe he was just feeling shy. Weirdly enough, that was kind of adorable. But today, the man was hitting different. The second she stepped off the carriage, he reached out, insisting on walking in hand. Mr. Cold and aloof was suddenly acting like husband of the year. It felt strange, sure, but the vibe was actually really comforting. As the family of three walked in, they were the main event, snagging everyone's attention. Compared to that disaster of a royal banquet, this was a total 180. Smiles everywhere. But Elisa wasn't buying the hype. She knew this was just the Duke pulling strings behind the scenes. After a quick hello to the Count, the young couple got shipped off to the Annex Villa. Basically, the kids' table of the party. And let's be real, aside from little Ansel, the host, nobody here wanted them around. They had major beef with the Crown Prince, after all. But who cares about haters when there's a table full of cookies? They barely finished saying hi to Ansel before her husband started getting snarky. Elisa literally shoved a sweet in his mouth to shut him up. You're talking way too much today. Whatever she fed him it probably tasted amazing. She was busy teasing him when, ouch! Her heel was throbbing. New shoes were wrecking her feet. Beauty is pain, right? She ditched her husband and collapsed on the balcony sofa. Sweet relief. But then her eavesdropping instincts kicked in. Word from the hallway was, the Crown Prince was gravely ill. Apparently, he got spooked real bad. Elisa rolled her eyes. Please, that guy isn't dying anytime soon. He's totally faking it for drama. The forest incident was humiliating for him, sure, but then the gossip train switched tracks to her husband. Apparently, Riart's mom was some street woman, calling him an illegitimate child, a former mercenary. That's why he's such a brute. Elisa was literally shaking with rage. She stormed into the hallway and faced the gossip squad solo. Zero fear. You cowards only have the guts to whisper. But my husband is twice the man you'll ever be. Pink hair was losing the argument when a silver-haired girl with a massive ego showed up. Wow, the attitude on you. It was the prince's fiancé. Pinky piped up, saying. Elisa needed to bow. Your education was a waste. Elisa fired back. I'm the young duchess. Do I need to bow to someone who isn't even royalty yet? Boom. Roasted. Silver hair turned beet red. Elisa walked away, adrenaline pumping. She didn't realize her husband had followed her. He saw her hands trembling and immediately grabbed them, super gentle. His eyes were cold, though. Don't waste your time on that trash. No. Elisa stood her ground. Even water drops can drill through a rock eventually. So imagine what words do to a heart. She picked her side. No way was she letting anyone trash talk her man. And hey, if anyone came for her, she expected him to unleash a storm on them too. Riart suddenly got it. She was terrified, shaking in her boots, but she still fought for him. That hit deep. Remembering her sore feet, he dropped into a squat. Elisa blinked, totally shocked by the move. A bit awkward, sure, but his shoulders were way warmer than she expected. Cut to the next day. Elisa was staring at a group of shirtless guys training. Her eyes were practically popping out of her head. Suddenly, her husband appeared right behind her. Elisa nearly jumped out of her skin, guilt written all over her face. She quickly stammered, "Oh, the knights look so cool. I totally want to learn fencing now." Real talk, she just wanted an excuse to hang out with the muscle squad, but she said it too casually. Because Riart took it seriously. I'll teach you myself. She forced a smile. You're great. Panic mode. She has zero interest in swords, just the eye candy. She politely excused herself and bolted. Watching her leave, Riart's jealousy flared up. What's so great about being a pretty boy? Next morning, enter poor Thompson. Good-looking guy, worked at the mansion for a year. Dude does his job, lives his life, but he must have ticked off the Duke because he got summoned at midnight for special training today. Except, Riart had just been staring at a balcony for 2 hours. Where's the training? Then, Riart saw a specific figure appear on the balcony. He finally signaled to start, immediately charged in, struck an elegant pose, and dropped the poor guy in 3 hits. Trying to blind his wife with his coolness, he whipped around to check. The upstairs window, totally empty at night. Fresh out of the wash, he's a stuttering mess, asking wifey what she was actually doing. Hearing she watched his workout, dude was internally screaming with joy. He tried playing it cool, lasted exactly 3 seconds. Elisa yanked him close, shattering his poker face. She's scanning him like a hawk, terrified that the heavy lifting ripped open those 2-day-old wounds. Mid-sentence, she hikes up his shirt. Instant cold sweat for him. He pivots to the map hard shift. Elisa's analyzing territories, occasionally asking for his take on the prime spots to live. He's confused, like why the sudden interest? Her answer hit him like a truck. She's literally plotting her post-divorce retirement. Suddenly, that little agreement from earlier comes rushing back. Remembering his own arrogant attitude, major regret, he frantically asks where she wants to settle. Surprise, surprise. It's suspiciously close to Ansel's place. So annoying. After that drama, the Duke's mansion stayed quiet for a hot minute, but come late spring, war news drops. It's that time where the imperial princes are supposed to hit the front lines to boost troop morale. But plot twist, the crown prince isn't just faking a sick day. The emperor pulls out some old pact, demanding Riart take the prince's spot. The duke is fuming. And Elisa is losing it. Sure, she knows her hubby won't die out there, but that hunting accident is still playing in 4K in her mind. Plus, she's the only one in this house who's actually on Team Riart. No, he's a beast, she tells herself. But for some reason, the tears just start welling up. One look at him and the waterworks break. Just because he survives doesn't mean he won't get wrecked. How much pain is he gonna take? She sprints over, tackling him into a hug, sobbing her heart out. She absolutely does not want him shipping off to war. Seeing Riart on the verge of deployment, while being blackmailed by his grandpa to pump out heirs. Yeah, he's not playing that game. Worst case scenario, he dumps the heir title. The duke is slamming the table in rage. You die, and the imperial family swallows Luberlin whole. He's spilled oceans of blood to protect this legacy, handing the family over to outsiders. Not happening. Watching the duke lose his mind, Riart can't help but feel the irony. The old man fears the family's fall more than his own grandson's death. But since Riart plans to destroy Luberlin himself, he's definitely coming back alive. And kids, totally unnecessary. But then, before he can even finish his rebellious speech, wifey steps in and agrees. Remember, she was just bawling about the war, eyes all puffy. But she figures, why waste time arguing with the duke when she could be with her man, compared to the first time they got locked in a room. The vibe now is totally different. Harmony, level 100. Riart starts to speak, but Elisa covers his mouth. She grabs his hand, whispering that their first time should be saved for love, not dictated by some old guy. Then she hits him with the reassurance. She already bribed the maid checking the sheets tomorrow, and Anya's in on it too, fooling the duke piece of cake. After all, the first night and the first kiss belong to the one you love. That's the only way to be happy. Seeing her, this gentle Riart is frozen solid. Love is such an alien concept to him. Mom died young, uncle sold him out, and his beloved father kicked him to the curb. He even almost died at his grandfather's hands. His life, pure darkness. But Elisa, she's the light that suddenly flooded his world. She doesn't just care, she throws hands to defend him, and even cries for him. He might not fully get love yet, but one thing is certain. He is not losing the one person who actually belongs to him. Meanwhile, the Emperor drops the deployment date. Officially, the enemy is invading in force. Unofficially, they just want Riart dead as soon as possible. So before shipping out, he's grinding in the forest, hunting monsters daily. Comes back covered in cuts every time. Elisa is equal parts heartbroken and furious. She doesn't ask permission, just rips his clothes open to patch him up, leaving Riart blushing like crazy. He's training like a maniac just to survive this war. Even his subordinate Thompson is suffering through the grind with him. Thompson's like burning out before the battle. Probably not the best strat boss. Besides, final moments should be spent with your VIP. Who knows when or if they'll meet again. Thompson was just running his mouth, but surprisingly, Riart actually listened. Flashback to last night, the exact moment his wife asked him to clock out early. He sprinted back. Zero hesitation. But he definitely didn't expect to walk in and find Elisa passed out cold on the sofa after waiting up for him for hours. She tried to throw this clumsy little birthday surprise. The guy didn't even know it was his own birthday, but he was totally vibing with the card she made. Elisa braced herself for a rage quit, but he just smiled and dropped a bombshell. He's taking a personal day. A legit date with his wife. Elisa was on cloud 9. But of course, who shows up at midnight? Rihanna, the OG female lead, just popping up like she owns the place. Clearly they had a meetup planned. The disrespect is real. Fast forward to the day after their date. Elisa knew her hubby was shipping out to the battlefield tomorrow. She couldn't help it. She clung to Riart and pressed a blessed protection charm into his hand. Riart was beaming. He leaned in to spill a secret. This room has a hidden escape tunnel. If things go south, you dip through there. I don't care where you hide. I will track you down. He's barely a kid, but hearing that Elisa felt totally secure, she spun him around and told him to crash early. She absolutely had to be up at the crack of dawn to see him off. But let's be real, once she sleeps, the apocalypse couldn't wake her, so she made Riart pinky swear to wake her up no matter what. Riart said yes, but his eyes said nope. He waited until she was deep in dreamland and said his goodbyes solo. Don't get sick. Don't be sad even if you're lonely. Bye, Elisa. I'll be back before you know it. A soft peck on the forehead became the final sweet memory of their youth. When Elisa opened her eyes the next morning, the other side of the bed was empty. He ghosted her. She was furious and heartbroken all at once. They had a deal. How could he just dip without a proper goodbye? She didn't even get to do her wifely duties. She was spiraling. One minute she's ranting about teaching her husband a lesson, and the next second she's turned into a scared little bunny, whispering, "Riart, please be careful." But from that day on, she became a total stranger in her own home. The maids ignored her straight to her face, and the old duke couldn't care less. Thank God for Anne, or her life would have been total trash. Just as she was calming down, she caught some tea spilling outside her door. That blonde maid was inciting the staff to loot the place, claiming the young duke wasn't making it back alive, like obviously going to war was a suicide mission, so they needed to secure their own bags. Elisa slammed the door open, screaming, "Secure what exactly?" She really wanted to hear the rest of that logic. The two maids froze like deer in headlights. The shy one folded, immediately apologizing, but the blonde one zero remorse. She literally challenged Elisa to her face, claiming that if the duke dies, the family crashes. The audacity of this girl. Elisa's expression went dark. Ice-cold stare. She kicked that blonde maid out of the mansion instantly. Then she dropped a warning to the rest of the staff to set the tone. Try me, and I won't show any mercy. 1 month dissolved in a heartbeat. The whole world was betting on Riart taking a massive loss, even though she had total faith in her husband's skills. The suspense was absolutely suffocating. Just as she was trying to manifest some calm, Anne rushed in with the news she'd been waiting for. The young duke won the first battle. Elisa jumped up, shook. "That's my husband." The weight finally lifted off her chest, but some people weren't gonna like this news. Elisa checked the date for the emperor's birthday. A savage idea popped into her head. Those haters. It was time for a reality check. Her husband is out there fighting for his life while the crown prince is throwing parties at home. Elisa wasn't having it. The moment she and the old duke walked in, the drama was about to unfold. Elisa put on her best fake polite smile and locked eyes on a certain someone. The crown prince thought this was still his main character moment, but the adults, they couldn't stop hyping up the young duke. I mean, at just 10 years old, he was already carrying the empire on his back. A literal prodigy. The other kids heard this and tried to glaze the royal family, claiming the duke only won because the emperor has such great vision. Right, Prince. The glazing failed hard. The prince nodded, looking super awkward. But inside, he was fuming. If the emperor hadn't ordered him to fake being sick in bed, none of this would be happening. He handed Riart that golden ticket to the battlefield. Maybe if he hadn't, Riart would be racking up wins right now instead of being the guy everyone compares him to. The jealousy was real. Dude was grinding his teeth so hard they might crack. Then a sound cut through the noise. Laughter. He spun around and spotted Elisa. She was vibing with two nobles, looking absolutely effortless. Well, isn't that the young duchess? Enter the crown prince, rolling deep with his entourage. He came over looking for a fight, but froze. Elisa wasn't just bowing, she was glowing. That smile, absolute perfection. When she sweetly asked about his health, all that aggression melted into awkwardness. He started stammering, trying to play it cool. "It's the emperor's birthday. As a loyal son, I had to show up." But Elisa just stared back, her expression shifting to pure concern. She put on a mask of worry. The crown prince is so devoted, then why are people whispering that weird rumor? You know, the one where you faked being sick because you were terrified of the battlefield. She watched him squirm as the crowd's eyes landed on him. Her voice was innocent, but the trap was lethal. She was publicly calling him out while pretending to defend his honor. The prince panicked and denied everything instantly. Elisa switched up fast. "Oh, my mistake then." But the bait was already taken. Faced with this adorable poisonous bunny, the prince crumbled. He loudly announced, "Right there, I'm joining the volunteer army this time." He puffed out his chest, looking proud, completely clueless that he just signed his own death warrant. What a clown. And Elisa was about to seal the deal. The duke stepped up, presenting a luminous stone worth 200 million. A massive birthday flex. The emperor feigned modesty, acting like he couldn't possibly accept such a lavish gift. Before the duke could even reply, Elisa cut in, smoothing things over with master-level flattery, and then she dropped the bomb. The crown prince just declared he's leading the volunteer army. What gift could possibly top that level of devotion? She totally ignored the emperor and empress whose jaws were on the floor. She laid it on thick, hyping him up like a superfan. The prince is so brave, such courage. With him on the front lines, victory is basically guaranteed. She trapped him with compliments he couldn't refuse. Her over-the-top praise worked like a charm. The prince was locked in for the expedition. Best of all, she finally earned the duke's genuine respect. He even assigned her a personal assistant officer, a perk usually reserved for the lady of the house. She was winning. Physically, mentally, she felt light as a feather and totally blissed out. When the army finally rolled out, they carried care packages from families to the knights on the front lines. Hearing this, Elisa grabbed a pen instantly. She penned a letter, not knowing it would be a lifeline. She just hoped her husband would smile when he read it. But plot twist, nobody expected this war to drag on for 7 long years. Cut to the battlefield. Riart stared at that letter, a soft smile breaking through his hardened expression. That arrogant kid was gone. In his place stood a total heartthrob who was absolutely obsessed with his wife. He gently kissed the dried flowers she sent over and over. Then he pulled a treasure from his chest pocket, the protection necklace. His little wifey gave it to him the night before he left. With his heart aching for her, these tokens were the only things keeping him sane. Knight Thompson finally showed up, completely out of breath. "Sector clear, enemies down," Thompson reported, but the young Duke just glared at him. "You're late." Thompson felt personally attacked. Seriously, even the fastest runner can't keep up with a guy who basically flies across the battlefield. But Thompson wasn't just there to chat. The Emperor had sent a delegation with a handwritten letter. It promised a massive victory parade for the army and a hero's welcome. The Emperor even promised to grant the young Duke any wish he desired. But our boy Riart, he didn't care. "The party is for the army. I'm going home." Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Elisa got the news. Her husband, the man she missed day and night, was coming back. She was buzzing with excitement. Finally, those divorce papers she prepped years ago were about to pay off. Just a little longer until the agreed time, and she could walk away from the ducal mansion, a free woman. The thought alone was a massive weight off her shoulders. She had survived the ordeal. It was almost time to say goodbye, but mixed with the joy was something else, a strange sense of loss. Late that night in the quiet, she flipped through the letters he'd sent over the years. His writing was still so innocent and pure. She chuckled, wondering if he'd grown up to be ugly or something. Suddenly, a gust of wind slammed onto the balcony. She jumped up. That breeze, it felt terrifyingly familiar. In a blink, there he was, Riart, standing right on her balcony. "Long time no see, Elisa." Clad in a crisp white shirt, looking absolutely god-tier. Was this a dream? Elisa's heart started pounding like a drum. She's racking her brain trying to calculate why he's back so early. The morning news cycle swore the Legion was still days out, but the longing hits different. Before she can process the logic, he's already gripping her hand tight. She freezes, totally confused, assuming he's just waxing poetic about missing the motherland. But then, glitch in the matrix. A fierce blush creeps right up to the back of her ears. Riart catches the reaction and flashes a killer smile, eyes dripping with pure obsession. "Need a wash," she stammers. "Way ahead of you." He guides her palm to his jawline, fresh, damp, and warm. "Wanna check for yourself?" Worried the bed is too cramped for his comfort, she offers to crash on the sofa. Flick. Finger against forehead. "Relax, I'm not gonna devour you. Tonight. We fit fine." That cracks her up. "Okay, bedmates it is." Joke's on him, she passes out instantly, body totally relaxed. No surprise, clingy cuddles or tossing and turning. He settles for a soft peck on her hair. Bummer. 7 years is a long time to wait for a rain check. But they've both leveled up. Elisa isn't that clueless rookie duchess anymore. She's running the show as the lady of the house, taking it territory by territory. The north used to be a frozen wasteland with zero food supply in winter. Lucky break, the iron mines turned out to be high-density gold mines. She pivoted, hiring drought-struck workers to mass-produce farming gear alongside the blacksmiths, then swapped that gear for southern grain. Boom, food crisis solved, heating crisis over. The treasury is overflowing from weapon sales. Even the dusty old ministers have to stand her competence. For 7 years, this level of boss energy has been her new normal. As the population boomed, Luberlin's threat level spiked. The Emperor is practically shaking in his boots lately. Back in the day, terrified of Riart's potential, the Emperor went crying to his snake-in-the-grass advisor Orme, begging for a plan that looked reasonable but would get Riart killed. And this guy, he played the four families pact card, make the crown prince fake a sick day, and force Riart to take his place in the meat grinder of war. With the Duke bedridden, Elisa seized the reins and totally revamped the management style. The villain slept on her. Now Luberlin is a fortress of cash and soldiers. Who knew the girl had teeth? So the young Duke is back. Fine. The plan shifts to lead Elisa before the reunion sticks. Flashback. They split right after the wedding, so when she saw him last night, she chalked it up to a vivid fever dream. In the dream, her husband was ripped gorgeous, and the chemistry off the charts. But the maid bursts her bubble. The young Duke is arriving now. Elisa is spinning. The butler confirms it. Riart is at the gates. It's showtime. Gates crash open, trumpets blare. The victorious Legion marches in, trailing their commander. 7 years. He's home. But why does he look exactly like the guy in her dream? As he rides closer, the distance closes and her stomach drops. "Morning, Elisa." It wasn't a dream. Last night happened, and he is absolutely loving her panic. Before she can spiral, the old Duke summons Riart. The old man is sick, but still toxic. Obsessed with legacy. "You rejected the girls I sent. Fine. Get to work making an heir with your wife." The audacity. Riart is grinding his teeth, absolutely done with the lecture. He storms out without a word, saves the country, comes home to this. Tonight he's drinking to forget. The banquet hall is rowdy with celebration. But he's sulking in the corner, giving Elisa the cold shoulder. "Young Duchess, have a drink." A knight shoves a barrel-sized mug at her, a symbol of loyalty. Riart glares, mood pitch black. She ignores his silent command to stop. Elisa grabs the massive cup. The room goes dead silent. To the heroes of Luberlin, she shouts, and she chugs it. Like a champ. The crowd goes wild. Riart is shook. The knights are throwing thumbs up. That's our duchess. Cut to she's wasted slurring her words. But the second someone starts complaining about her husband, Ella instantly jumped to his defense, claiming the guy was just a big softie wrapped in a prickly exterior. A classic case of all bark no bite, leaving the other dude totally bewildered. And speak of the devil, hubby swoops in and confiscates the wine barrel. He announces it's past her bedtime. Ella hits him with the puppy dog eyes, pouting hard. Come on, can't we hang out just a little longer? Hubby lets out a soft sigh, grinning. Absolutely not. That's when she goes full brat mode, refusing to budge. You want me to leave? You're gonna have to carry me. And warning, I weigh a ton. She didn't expect him to call her bluff instantly. Riart swoops in. Boom. The super hottie husband scoops her up into a perfect princess carry. Okay, maybe she was a little heavier than he thought. Right in front of the entire single squad, he carries his wifey home. It's giving major honeymoon phase energy. So wholesome. But she's wasted acting like a total kid. He tucks her in gently, pulling up the covers, but she snatches his hand before he can pull away. In a drunken haze, she mumbles, "Don't worry, I'm just holding your hand to sleep." He sighs again, totally defeated by her cuteness. What am I gonna do with you? Just holding hands. I'm afraid that's not gonna be enough for me anymore. Cut to the next morning. Elisa wakes up looking like a hot mess. Memories of her drunken antics flood back and she freezes. Total system crash. She has never cringe spiraled this hard in her life. What if her husband saw everything? Suddenly, the door creaks open. She dives under the blanket, attempting the classic "I'm asleep" maneuver, but she can't resist taking a tiny peek. And oh my god, he's in pajama pants, chest on full display. The man is sculpted like a Greek god. Water droplets are still glistening on his face. It's almost illegal to look that good. But then he starts stripping. Elisa feels her soul leaving her body from pure embarrassment. Like, sir, could you be any more casual? But let's be real, she's glued to the show. In the blink of an eye, he's fully changed and walking toward the bed. She squeezes her eyes shut, bracing for impact. Her heart is literally hammering against her ribs. But come on, her Sleeping Beauty act isn't fooling anyone, especially not him. How long are you gonna play possum, busted? She sits up defeated. She tries to scramble for an excuse, but he interrupts by handing her a hangover potion. While clutching the cup, she subtly tries to fish for info. Did she do anything crazy last night? Hard to say, he teases, flashing a cryptic smirk. That look sends her into a spiral of shame and frustration. Did she actually cross a line? The anxiety keeps her zoned out all day. Plus, her head is splitting open. And that cure he gave her, it tastes like pure poison. Bitter is an understatement. Note to self, never drinking again. Suddenly, a noise from outside catches her attention. She heads to the balcony and spots Riart. He's deep in work mode, and damn, he looks good. Like, who ordered the model husband? Adult Riart definitely didn't peak in high school. He's got this soft, gentle vibe now. While she's busy thirsting over him and mumbling to herself, he suddenly looks up. Did he hear her? She ducks out of sight, pure reflex. She's confused. Why is she panicking? It's obviously because she's catching feelings, even if she's too in denial to admit it. Just then, the butler interrupts. The Duke wants a word. No-brainer here. The old man is definitely obsessing over grandkids again. But this time, the Duke drops a threat. If she tries anything shady, he'll kill the maid she sees as a sister. The mere thought sends a shiver of pure terror down her spine. So she caves. She throws on this sheer see-through nightgown. Totally not her style, but she's desperate. Fighting the cringe, she tries to hype herself up. It's fine, everything's fine. After all, Riart isn't the type to force anything, but if she remembers the original novel correctly, this is exactly when the heir is supposed to be conceived. She is so not ready for this. Riart steps up behind her, but when he sees the look of distress on her face, she starts rambling excuses, terrified he's gonna kick her to the curb. But then he does something unexpected. He wraps a sheet around her shivering shoulders. He's not mad, he's worried. He tells her to ignore whatever toxic garbage the Duke was spouting. After making sure she's okay, he turns on his heel to leave. She tries to call out, but he's already gone, vanished like a ghost. She knows he's doing this to protect her. So, for the sake of everyone's happy ending, she needs to speed up the divorce. Over the next few days, Riart starts ghosting her, only sneaking back into their room way past midnight. But tonight, she catches him red-handed, and she drops a bomb. Maybe we should sleep in separate rooms. Panic mode activated. Why? He blurts out. Elisa's nose gets all pink and teary, convinced he's just uncomfortable around her. I don't feel that way, he insists. Then why do you bail every time the sun goes down? Riart turns beet red, stuttering some lame excuse about liking night walks. Lies. The truth. He's terrified he can't keep his hands off her much longer. Coming back to find her sleeping peacefully is the highlight of his day. He's definitely not ready to give up the privilege of sleeping right next to her, but he can't exactly admit that. Luckily, his wife seems super curious about his walking routine. Soaring through the sky, total main character vibe, right? You want in, Elisa? Was absolutely vibrating with hype, tossing on her windbreaker and locking fingers with her hubby. But real talk, the anxiety was creeping in. What if I faceplant? Riart just smirked. Hold on tight and gravity can't touch you. She awkwardly latched onto him. Check that winner's grin on his face. He scooped her up, princess style, and just like that, lift off. Goodbye, solid ground. Elisa froze too, terrified to even twitch in his arms. The wind was screaming past her ears like a jet engine. She kept her eyes squeezed shut, refusing to look until her husband whispered for her to take a peek. That massive ducal estate. From up here, it looked like a tiny Lego set scattered on the floor. It felt unreal, like a lucid dream. Thank you. Her husband gazed back, eyes dripping with pure affection. But the fact they pulled an all-nighter together? Yeah, that sent the Duke into a blind rage. He didn't just kick Elisa out of the bedroom. He tried to slide new girls into his grandson's rotation. Dude is on death's door and still obsessed with heirs. Elisa felt totally helpless against his stubbornness. She went to talk strategy with her husband, kicked open the door, and oops, caught a full view of Riart's shredded physique. Fresh out of the shower, dripping wet. Instant blush for both of them. She quickly faked shock, stammering out an excuse. But suddenly, frantic pounding on the door killed the mood. The servant was hyperventilating, the Duke was fading fast. Talk about a plot twist nobody saw coming. Seeing the old man gasping for air, Elisa felt a mix of pity and sadness. He spent his whole life grinding for the family. Even at the finish line, he wouldn't rest. She didn't get it. You come into this world with nothing, you leave with nothing. Why the obsession? Hearing Riart wanted a private moment with the dying man. She politely dipped, leaving them alone. Riart actually wanted him to survive a bit longer just to watch, with his own eyes as his dreams burned to ash, to live in agony and despair. But the old man was getting off too easy. For the first time, he called him grandfather, but his eyes pure, unadulterated hatred. Luberlin is mine now. The Duke raged, mouth opening and closing silently, taking his grudge to the grave. Riart slid his eyes shut. Make sure you watch me from hell. Nobody expected the Duke to flatline that fast. Her husband, face completely blank, was secretly hurting. But remember this marriage. It was just a business deal at the end of the day. Even though she bossed it as the lady of the territory for 8 years for his happiness, she had to bounce. Plus, Riart was fully healed, running the empire solo. Piece of cake for him now. Time to pack up. Once the room cleared out, she started, Riart, we need to talk. But looking at his face, the words got stuck in her throat. She stuttered for a solid minute, finally building up the nerve. But you know the rule. When things go quiet, chaos strikes. A knight burst in panicked. Massive horde of magic beasts spotted in the West Forest. And their damage output, insane. Riart didn't hesitate, he was suiting up to handle it instantly. Elisa felt the vibe was off. Magic beasts appearing in the dead of winter. They were spawning constantly lately, attacking locals. This wasn't just spring fever. Was someone pulling strings from the shadows? Just as that dark thought hit her, her little assistant rushed in. Avalanche reported in a mountain village. Code red. Reports said 0 casualties, but arriving on the scene, the devastation stopped her heart. The whole village was swallowed by snow. 50 degrees below zero, how does anyone survive that? She jumped off her horse to do damage control. No injuries, no one buried. But one little girl was sobbing uncontrollably. Her brother went up the mountain for firewood and ghosted. When she heard West Forest, Elisa's stomach dropped. Isn't that the exact spawn point for the magic beasts? She masked her panic, praising the little girl's guts, and promised her brother was fine. But inside, she knew they had to launch a rescue mission as soon as possible. Problem is, she wasn't even sure herself. All she could do was pray the kid was still breathing. But Murphy's Law is real. What you fear most happens. Deep in the West Forest, a pack of starving one-horned wolves was drooling. The boy shaking under a bush was terrified. Was this game over? Over in the neighboring village, it was total chaos. Elisa wasn't just sitting around. She was frantically scrambling to stockpile supplies so these villagers could actually survive the night. She handled the immediate crisis like a pro, but the vibe was still heavy. That missing kid, still ghosted. Absolutely 0 leads. All the search party found was a lonely bundle of firewood deep in the woods. The sun was setting fast, and the night begged her to turn back. But Elisa, she totally ignored the warning. She wasn't backing down. She joined the search team herself, but instead of finding the boy, she stumbled into something way more twisted. We're talking about a magic beast with a human face. Usually these freaks are terrified of people and stay hidden, but now, they were crawling right out of the mountains. Elisa's expression darkened. This wasn't just random nature acting up. Something sketchy was definitely messing with these creatures' heads. They combed the area from dawn until dusk. Literally nothing. Not a trace. And to make matters worse, a brutal snowstorm started kicking up again. Just when the crew was begging her to call it quits, a shrill scream pierced the air. Over here, move it. They found the kid shaking like a leaf. Miraculously, he wasn't hurt, just traumatized. He was barely catching his breath when he suddenly shrieked, "Lady, watch out!" Pure terror on his face. That human-faced nightmare was back, glowing crimson red and locking eyes directly on Elisa. She spun around, trembling. Too late to run. The thought flashed through her mind. Is this really how I die? As the ferocious beast lunged for the kill, pure instinct took over. She threw her hand out. She wasn't ready to check out just yet. But then, a plot twist no one saw coming. The second her fingertips grazed, the beast blinding blue sparks exploded from her hand. That bloodthirsty monster that wanted to rip her apart. It instantly chilled out, transforming into a docile puppy in seconds. What on earth just happened, Elisa? Was confused, but hey, at least she wasn't Monster Chow for the moment. But the celebration was premature. They were suddenly surrounded by a whole pack of magic beasts, backed right up against a deadly cliff. Total panic mode. Elisa was out of options. Then, a familiar gust of wind swept through. Riart descended from the sky like an avenging god. Back off, you filth dare touch his wife. That is a straight-up death wish. Boom, lightning crashed down. The beasts were instantly fried hair, standing on end, totally paralyzed. Sparks were flying everywhere. Honestly, sprinkle a little cumin on them and they'd make a decent barbecue. In seconds, the threat was neutralized. Elisa looked at her husband, heart swelling with relief. But Riart went a little too hard with the lightning. The ground beneath them started cracking like a spider web. In a blink, the cliff edge shattered. Elisa plummeted into the abyss. Riart screamed her name, diving headfirst after her, reaching out to catch her. Clutch! He snagged her midair, wrapping her in a protective embrace. But gravity is a cruel mistress. They were falling way too fast, and even with his insane power, he couldn't change course in time. He blasted wind to soften the blow. Splash! They hit the water hard. When the knights peeked over the edge, all they saw was rushing rapids. The Duke and Duchess were gone. Panic mode activated. The knights split up, scrambling to find them. Luck was on their side. They found the couple in an abandoned shack shortly after. Back at the mansion, though, Elisa was trapped in a fever dream she couldn't wake up from. Riart sat by her side, clutching her hand, eating himself alive with guilt for failing to protect her. Just then, Thompson burst in with intel. They finally figured out why the magic beasts were acting so crazy. They pulled a weird purple crystal out of a beast's stomach. This thumb-sized rock was toxic enough to corrupt the entire land. Heck, it could even turn people into the Walking Dead. Riart's gut told him this was bad news, like world-ending bad news. That stone belongs in the canyon, which is supposed to be locked down by magic barriers. This wasn't nature. This was a man-made disaster. Determined to find the culprit, he headed straight for the canyon. And sure enough, his hunch was right. The soldiers guarding the barrier were already compromised. The crystals had sucked their souls dry, twisting them into mindless zombies. The only mercy was a swift sword to the heart. After putting the fallen soldiers to rest, Riart led the team deeper. The air got heavy and suffocating, until out of nowhere, a fresh breeze hit them. It was the purification lake. Its holy water was holding back the dark energy, but they couldn't lower their guard yet. You never know what's lurking in the shadows. Barely a second after Riart told everyone to stay sharp, the enemy appeared. A humanoid monster stepped out of the darkness. Creepiest part, it seemed to understand every word they said. But when it heard the warning to rest in peace, it didn't stop. It charged even faster. Riart didn't flinch. He blasted the thing 30 feet back. As his sword pierced its chest, the monster actually spoke. "I've been waiting for this day," it rasped. "Finally, I'm free." But what she heard made Riart's blood run cold. That monster, there was something sickeningly familiar about him. He was totally locked in, obsessed with his. He never saw the dark energy coming, but he definitely felt the aftermath, a sharp, agonizing pain ripping through his entire body. Meanwhile, Elisa's fever finally broke. The maid Annie spilled the tea. Those magic beasts popping up lately were triggered by a demon stone, and her husband was out hunting the source. But Elisa's gut screamed that the mastermind was actually the Emperor. That tyrant was targeting Luberlin, stretching his shadowy claws toward their people. Absolutely disgusting. Even with Annie trying to hype her up, Elisa was a nervous wreck about her man. He'd been back for several days, yet total radio silence. After dreaming about the original heroine, her anxiety skyrocketed. She was terrified he was giving her the cold shoulder. They'd crossed a line he despised in the original novel. What if he started hating her now? She couldn't bear to imagine that ending. Suddenly, a maid burst in, screaming her lungs out. "Madam Disaster." The Duke collapsed. Elisa's heart dropped. Ignoring her weak, feverish body, she sprinted down the hall, desperate to check if he was okay. But instead of a warm reunion, he shot her a cold side glance and walked right past her. Muttering he had zero time for this, she stood there stunned. Why was he dodging her? Was it because of that night? Maybe he really detested getting intimate. Annie saw the panic in her eyes. "Don't worry, ma'am. The young Duke is a beast. He'll bounce back." Annie's sweetness lifted her mood. Elisa decided to stop overthinking and confront him face to face. She happily ordered a feast for dinner and headed to the dining hall, ready to talk. But then the butler dropped the bomb. The Duke wasn't coming. He was self-isolating, claiming he didn't want to spread any lingering dark energy to others. Staring at the empty chair, she felt crushed, but refused to quit. When midnight struck, and he still hadn't shown, she barged into his office. She told him he didn't need to take responsibility for what happened that night. She just wanted peace. but somehow, that only triggered his rage. "I won't," he snapped, brushing past her again. He threw the door open. "Get out, Elisa. Stay away from me." She agreed, fighting back tears, and walked away. That simple "good night" shattered Riart's heart. The truth, Riart was in absolute agony. Back in the canyon, the dark energy hadn't just hit him. It scorched him black and knocked him unconscious. If a tank like him couldn't handle it, his sick wife stood no chance. He couldn't risk holding her, so he kept his mouth shut. Plus, the monster's dying words, "my desire," haunted him. He never wanted things to end like this. Face buried in his hands, he broke down. Would his precious wife ever understand? After that office fight, the couple went ghost on each other for 2 weeks, until it was time to head to the imperial capital to investigate the truth behind the beasts. Elisa only caught a glimpse of him from afar. Separate carriages, that stung. Watching the servants wave goodbye, she had a sinking feeling she'd never return to this place. A simple piece of paper was the only thing keeping her tethered here anyway. Maybe it was time to finally file for divorce. Suddenly, a wave of dizziness hit her weird. She never got travel sick. 15 days of non-stop travel left her weak, dizzy, and running a constant fever. Even though they were close to the capital, Riart ordered a full stop to camp. He was freaking out. His dark energy had faded, and he was dying to check on her. Seeing his wife suffer like this tore him apart. "You should have told me sooner," he urged, but she hadn't wanted to be a burden to the group. Just then, Annie arrived with a bowl of energy soup. "Eat this, you'll feel brand new." But the moment Elisa laid eyes on the food, her stomach did a backflip. She shoved her husband aside and scrambled outside like a maniac, gagging. She felt absolutely terrible. When Riart tried to call a medic, she waved him off, claiming it was just motion sickness. But deep down, panic set in. She missed her period this month. Was she pregnant? The thought brought zero joy. She couldn't shake the memory of his voice, cold, detached, vowing to end his own bloodline. In the original storyline, her husband viewed his own son with absolute disgust. It was hatred so deep he wanted to kill the boy with his own hands. She would never let that nightmare become reality. Before she could process it, the carriage rolled up to the Grand Ducal estate in the capital. Riart was hovering, panic in his eyes, demanding a doctor immediately. She insisted she was fine, but he refused to leave her side. The second the doctor walked in, her mind went blank. Was this divine luck or a total disaster? Saved by the bell, a subordinate pulled Riart away for urgent business. Elisa faked a sudden recovery and dodged the royal physician's exam. She needed confirmation, but strictly off the record. She grabbed Annie. They sneaked into a hole-in-the-wall clinic. One look at the doctor's grim face, and Elisa knew. The test was positive. Walking out, the silence was deafening. Neither dared to speak. Annie was reeling. She didn't even know they had been intimate. When did it happen? Was it that chaotic day they fell off the cliff? Yes. One accidental night. Irony at its finest, right? She was plotting her divorce and fate handed her a pregnancy. Annie squeezed her hand, eyes welling up. She blamed herself. "I should have watched over you better. I was so careless." Seeing the maid spiral into guilt, Elisa forced a brave smile. She couldn't let this sweet girl beat herself up. But panic was setting in. Annie suggested the logical thing. "Since there's a baby, maybe stick together." Elisa felt her stomach drop. Annie didn't know the lore. Riart didn't just dislike kids. He loathed them, especially this one. Wait, Annie's eyes went wide. So the Duke didn't use protection. That absolute scumbag, Annie raged. She thought he was a decent guy. The more she thought about it, the madder she got. Furious tears streamed down her face. She thumped her chest. "I've got you. I will protect this baby with my life. Just don't carry this burden alone, my lady." Elisa's heart melted. With Annie in her corner, she actually felt safe. But comfort didn't change the script. She knew the original novel, this unborn child. He was destined to be Hans, the unloved side character. Riart's hatred for the boy started before he was even born. Growing up in a cold, loveless world, the kid's psyche shattered. He became a villain who kidnapped and caged the heroine. A monster starving for affection. Elisa swore a silent oath. Not in this timeline. That tragedy ends now. Running away was the only play. She had considered staying, maybe helping him build up the territory. But she remembered overhearing a conversation right after the old Duke died. The butler had tried to convince Riart to start a family, assuming his hesitation was just resentment over an arranged marriage. The butler wasn't totally wrong, but he missed the bigger picture. Riart hated the old Duke's legacy so much he wanted the entire family tree to burn and die with him. That look of pure repulsion on his face, it still haunted her. If 3 people were destined for misery, maybe 2 was a better number. She rubbed her belly, finally letting a spark of maternal joy settle in. To prep for the arrival, she dove into parenting books. Since Hans would inherit the family's magical power, she needed to learn how to control it. She remembered the lore. Riart had no guide, learning only through pain and trauma. She wouldn't let her son suffer the same fate. Just then, the butler delivered a letter. It was from Ansel. The secret villa was finished, complete with photos of the hideout. Her heart raced. The escape plan was a go. Suddenly, Riart ghosted into the room. He eyed the paper in her hands. What's that? Nothing, she lied, sliding it out of sight. She needed to drop the divorce bomb. Fast. The next day after he returned from the palace, she went for it. I want a divorce. Riart's face darkened instantly. It's late, he snapped, shutting her down. Go to sleep. Conversation over. The failed negotiation kept her up at night. But his refusal, his stubbornness, it triggered a realization. Reality was drifting away from the original plot. The dynamic had shifted. He didn't hate her. If he could care for her, could he learn to love their child? Nothing was set in stone anymore. Maybe she didn't have to fear the bad ending. Elisa steeled herself. She needed to have a serious talk with her husband right now. But before she could even reach for the doorknob, Richard was already standing there. Richard, you're here. He looked completely flustered, mumbling something about wanting to grab lunch together. But I literally just finished breakfast. Richard turned beet red, looking totally panic-stricken. Then, let's go for a drive, get some fresh air. He was terrified she was bored out of her mind at home, with that shy puppy dog look. His offer was actually perfect. She shooed him off to grab some food first. This was it. Today she was going to fix this. Physically, she felt like a wreck, but thanks to Annie's magic touch, she looked stunning, fresh as a blooming flower. And when she turned around, Richard was a goner. He fell for her all over again, the moment their eyes locked. The air was so thick with emotion, neither could say a word. He gently took her hand, and they hopped into the carriage, heading for the countryside. Richard was zoning out, his mind racing. Why couldn't Elisa see how much he loved her? Why was there this disconnect? Watching him sit there in silence, Elisa assumed he was still stewing over their fight last night. She figured the only reason he wouldn't sign the divorce papers was out of duty, seeing her as family or a friend. But a tiny spark of hope started to flicker. Could they actually make this work? A happy family of 3, no divorce needed. While she was lost in these thoughts, the first trimester exhaustion hit her like a truck. She passed out and Richard pulled her into a soft embrace. Truth was, he had no clue why she was so desperate to leave him. They spent 7 years apart, and now that they were finally reunited, she brings up a contract from 8 years ago, holding her tight. His heart ached with how much he needed her. He couldn't survive without her now. A lifetime together, that was the dream. Outside the cherry blossom forest looked like a scene straight out of a fairy tale. A family of 4 playing under the trees looked so happy that jealousy stung Elisa's heart. Kids are pretty adorable, aren't they? Richard frowned. Really, I don't think so. Elisa pressed on. So, do you want kids of your own? She asked casually, praying he'd changed his mind. Richard looked stunned, thinking she was the one who wanted a baby. Because of the trauma with his grandfather, he'd sworn off having kids. Not that he hated them, but he'd heard horror stories about how much women suffer during pregnancy and childbirth. Plus, Elisa's health had been so fragile lately, he couldn't be that selfish. Better to wait until she was strong again. So he lied. I haven't really thought about it. He was about to explain his reasons, but got cut off by Thompson and his kid, causing a ruckus nearby. That kid is a handful. Elisa felt crushed by his answer, but hearing the kid's infectious laughter, she couldn't help but beam. But the verdict was in. Richard didn't want a baby. It was all just wishful thinking, to keep everyone from being miserable. Her only option was to leave. That day in the woods sealed it. He didn't want children, and it broke her heart. But she knew Richard had suffered severe mental abuse from the old Duke since childhood, so his stance made total sense. It was her fault for pinning her hopes on someone else. Actually, maybe this was for the best. No more getting her hopes up, only to be let down. If a clean divorce wasn't on the table, she'd have to run. Just as she was plotting her escape, Annie popped up with a vial. Take this before you eat. It helps with the morning sickness, even though it's hit or miss, depending on the person. This is perfect. Elisa was incredibly touched by Annie's dedication. Suddenly, Richard stormed in out of nowhere. His face was stone cold and terrifying. Did he find out the secret? Elisa's hands started trembling uncontrollably, the medicine bottle rattling in her grip. Tell Annie to leave, he commanded. Elisa braced herself for the worst. What exactly is wrong with you? At his question, she quietly lowered her hand. She just wanted to retreat to her room and confess everything. Instead, he crushed her into a bear hug, screaming her name. Are you planning to go off and die somewhere without me? I won't let you go. His voice cracked with desperation. Elisa blinked. He totally misunderstood. She never expected to see him sobbing like a broken child. She gently reached up, wiped the tears from his eyes, and gave a small smile. Actually, Annie just gave me medicine for gastritis. It's not a terminal illness, I promise. Don't panic. But Richard wasn't letting go that easily. He insisted on nursing her. She had no reason to say no. Okay, fine, she agreed. She figured he was swamped with work and wouldn't stick around for long. Boy, was she wrong. He stayed by her side for over 2 weeks straight, sleeping right next to her every single night. Watching his handsome face while he slept, anxiety started to creep in. Her morning sickness was finally fading, but that baby bump, it was popping a little more every single day. If she stayed, he'd figure it out fast. She traced her fingers along her husband's jawline, praying he'd eventually understand why she had to do this. That silent hug, it wasn't just a cuddle, it was a final goodbye. Early the next morning, he suited up for work. But before heading out, he went full helicopter husband mode, dropping like 1,000 reminders. Call the doc if you feel weird, eat your lunch even if you're not hungry, blah blah blah. He was nagging like a total mom, and Elisa didn't know whether to laugh or cry. As he prepped to head out, she got up to see him off. She kept the vibes light, all smiles and chatter, until he dropped the "I'm leaving" line. That hit her right in the feels. She squeezed him tight, trying to memorize the warmth radiating off his chest one last time. Riart was totally clueless. "Don't stress, babe. I'll be back as soon as possible," he promised. A perfect goodbye for a lie. She watched him disappear out the door. Tears welled up, but she blinked them back and whipped around to Annie. "Pack it up. We're bouncing. Now." Elisa dragged Annie to that secret tunnel Riart mentioned ages ago. They squeezed through the dark claustrophobic passage until they spotted the exit. Click! The door swung open and the blinding sun hit them like a flashbang. Elisa looked absolutely drained, like a walking zombie. Annie was freaking out seeing her face so pale. "You need a break," Miss Annie asked. Tempting, but nope. "Duke's gonna notice we're ghosting him by tomorrow morning. We gotta move." If they didn't bolt right now, the whole plan would crash and burn. She threw one last look at the castle, feeling a pang of guilt. "Take care of yourself, Riart." Then they hustled. They hit up a merchant guild and dropped the secret pickup code. Boom! Everything she'd stashed away was waiting right there. The branch manager treated them like royalty, even whipping up a 5-star breakfast personally. Supplies check, cash check, all loaded in the carriage. The boss even threw in some hired muscle for protection. Gotta admit, the guy knew how to organize. A juicy prime steak sat on the table, flanked by fresh bread and greens. But Elisa's stomach churned. She tried to force a bite down just to fuel up. When suddenly stab, sharp pain ripped through her gut. Annie looked panicked, but Elisa waved it off. "Just not hungry, I swear." But as she stood up to thank the boss, the room spun. Everything went pitch black. Thank God for Annie's reflexes. She caught Elisa and realized she was burning up with a crazy high fever. Elisa's breathing was getting shallow. Annie was a mess, sobbing. She wanted to wait until Elisa recovered, but they'd fought so hard to escape. Elisa's only thought was, "Get me out of here." Annie was spiraling, but the guild boss had a plan. Meanwhile, back in Actionland, Riart was busy hunting down the mastermind behind the Demon Stone incident. He touched down with a superhero landing, going somewhere. The purple-haired dude was sweating bullets. He smiled politely, but his hands were creeping behind his back. Big mistake. Riart slapped the hidden dagger away like it was nothing and delivered a nasty right hook. Purple hair hit the dirt instantly. Snap, crackle, pop went his bones. The guy started wailing like a baby. "Mercy, your grace, mercy," Riart glared. "Spill it. Now." Just as the truth was about to drop, danger spiked. Riart deflected a barrage of hidden weapons in a blur of motion. But something felt off. That attack was too basic. He spun around and saw 2 assassins in black diving for the purple-haired witness. Riart moved to intercept, but agony exploded in his shoulder. The curse was flaring up now. Fighting the pain, he raised a hand. Dark energy surged out, and boom, all 3 men dropped dead instantly. Even Riart was spooked. He stared at the bodies. Did I just do that? Before he could process the carnage, a guard came sprinting in, screaming bloody murder. "My lord, the Duchess. She's gone." Back at the guild, the boss had whisked Elisa and Annie to his private villa and brought in a top-tier doctor to watch over Elisa 24/7. 3 days later, the color finally returned to Elisa's cheeks. "Okay, I'm feeling way more human now." Annie let out a huge sigh of relief and tried to fetch snacks, but Elisa stopped her. "I need another checkup first." Good news, the pregnancy was stable. They could hit the road in a few days. Elisa was beyond grateful. If she'd forced herself to travel that day, she might have lost the baby. Just then, Annie, her face was a mask of pure panic. She said a noble lady just barged in, but Elisa didn't recognize this redhead at all. "I heard you needed me like yesterday." "Excuse me, but did you happen to bring a doctor?" Looking at the woman, she was practically shaking. She knew she was crashing the party uninvited. Once Elisa gave the green light, the woman gripped her hand like a lifeline. "Please, you have to help me." Turns out her daughter had been burning up with a fever since last night. Bad timing. There's an epidemic nearby, so the town's only doc skipped town to help the neighbors. This lady was out of options. She had nowhere else to turn. Elisa was shook. Dragging a kid into a contagion zone? That's straight up dangerous. "I just heard a noble was here and took a shot in the dark. Usually rich folks only come here to recover. So it was a total gamble." But Elisa was expecting a baby of her own, and that motherly instinct kicked in hard. She felt that woman's fear in her bones, so she didn't even hesitate. I'll do it. Night fell fast. Finally, the little girl's fever broke. The woman. She was beyond grateful. She asked for her savior's name, but Elisa just made one up on the spot. She is a fugitive, after all. Then came the curveball. Where is your husband? Elisa looked away, feeling awkward, and lied through her teeth. I'm divorced. She figured she'd never see this lady again anyway. Plot twist. The woman standing right there was the emperor's half-sister, now hitched to some marquee. I am so sorry I haven't been in the capital long. I totally didn't recognize your highness. But the princess was chill zero ego. Hearing Elisa was divorced and pregnant, it hit her right in the feels. Without missing a beat, she ripped the necklace off her neck and pressed it into Elisa's hands. Elisa reminded the princess of her bestie, who also showed up pregnant and alone. The princess couldn't save her back then, and that regret haunted her. If you ever hit a rough patch, come find me. Seriously. That instant connection, it wrecked Elisa in the best way. Thank you so much, ma'am. Meanwhile, cut to the holy temple. The high priest was deep in prayer, vibing with the deities. The Celta fam has been churning out high priests for centuries. Only the guy with the wildest holy power gets the top spot. And right now, Aiden is the last man standing. Suddenly, mid-prayer, he got a bad feeling, a vision. His Excellency the Duke was in trouble. His eyes snapped open. He turned to the cleric next to him. Get the Knight Commander. Now. Back at the Duke's mansion, Riart figured out exactly when his wife vanished. He was losing his mind, tearing the place apart. Looking like a man ready to commit murder. If he hadn't tracked down the driver who took her to that merchant guild branch, heads definitely would have rolled. He was just about to storm the guild when his squad blocked him. They were like, boss, listen, right or wrong. You gotta apologize first when you see her. Happy wife, happy life. But Riart wasn't trying to hear that. He went to work, came back, and poof, she's gone, leaving just a letter saying she hopes he lives happily ever after. He was destroyed. How's he supposed to be happy without Elisa? He crashed into the guild, absolutely fuming. Bring me the branch manager now. The poor desk guy was shaking in his boots but scrambled to get the boss. But the manager, total pro. Client confidentiality is key. When asked about a blonde woman with blue eyes, he played dumb. Doesn't ring a bell, even though he knew exactly who she was. Still, he took the search request because if he didn't, the Duke would probably burn the building down. The knights turned the place upside down. Nothing. Riart was about to snap. Suddenly, a knight ran up with a letter. It had the Duchess's name on it, but that definitely wasn't Elisa's handwriting. But the second he read the content, he shouted, "We move out. Now." Meanwhile, Elisa was already in a carriage heading to the docks. The princess's kindness was still on her mind. It got her thinking, if her own mom were alive, would she care this much originally? She was terrified the long carriage ride would wreck her body before she even got there. Luckily, the guild manager hooked them up with a water route. Way faster, way smoother. But Annie looked miserable. She thought she was a good bodyguard until she watched her mistress collapse with a fever. Reality check, she was naive. Besides crying and freaking out, she was useless. If it happened again, she wouldn't have a clue what to do. So she secretly sent a distress signal to the Duke, but by the time the vessel launched, he was a no-show. You can't even imagine the anxiety. After days of travel, both mistress and maid passed out from sheer exhaustion the second they boarded. This was totally off script for Elisa. Then, dead of night, she jolts awake. Heart pounding, she stumbles out of the cabin, staring up at the starry void, letting the ocean breeze hit her face. But the vibes were off. She couldn't enjoy the view. Would she ever see the ducal mansion again in this lifetime? They lived together for less than a year, yet why are memories of Riart living rent-free in her head? Clutching the stolen brooch, her only keepsake, her heart sank. Suddenly the wind screams past her. She snaps her head up and freezes. A familiar silhouette descends from the heavens like a literal god riding the storm. It's Riart. Seeing his wife recoil in terror, Riart pulls her into a crushing embrace. He gently cups Elisa's stunned face. "Where do you think you're running with my heir?" Riart warns, jaw clenched tight. "You're carrying my child. You aren't going anywhere. I don't care how far you run." But his harsh tone starts cracking, fighting back the rage. Remembering his subordinate's advice, Riart's eyes actually start welling up with tears. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Let's talk inside." Annie was pacing around, freaking out about where her mistress vanished to so late. But then, plot twist, she sees the couple walk in together. Probably to give the girls a moment, Riart steps out, promising to return. Elisa is totally lost. How did he track her down? Suddenly, Annie hits the floor knees first. Turns out when the mistress was feverish and passed out, she kept whispering Riart's name. Annie was terrified and clueless, so she leaked the location to the Duke. Behind Elisa's back, Annie is sobbing uncontrollably, drowning in guilt. But Elisa isn't mad. She comforts Annie, just saying, "Don't do it again." Strangely enough, she feels a massive weight lift now that her escape plan failed. Seeing Riart was terrifying, sure, but also nostalgic and sweet. Remembering she fled because she thought he'd hurt the baby, she feels like an absolute clown. The truth finally comes out. Riart opens the door again, ready for the real talk. Once Annie clears the room, he asks the big question. Why didn't you tell me you were pregnant? Because you didn't want a baby. Hearing that, he stands there completely paralyzed. She admits she overheard his chat with the old butler, which is why she tried to ghost him to raise the kids solo. Flashback to that day. And suddenly, it all clicks. She had been dropping hints. He pulls his wife into a desperate hug, repeating over and over, I'm sorry, this is all on me. I should have paid more attention. What I told the butler wasn't that I disliked kids, so please stop running away. The misunderstanding is finally dead. All of Elisa's suppressed grief comes rushing up. Happy tears start flowing without breaks. Maybe destiny has shifted. The child won't be miserable. Like in the original novel timeline, she and Riart can actually have a happily ever after. Hearing him apologize on loop, she finally breaks down and cries her heart out. The moon dips below the horizon. Meanwhile, the guild ship pulls a U-turn and docks. All thanks to the Duke, who paid double the penalty fee to stop the vessel. The squad has the carriage ready, and seeing their mistress, they instantly spill their feelings. The Duke is clueless about territory management. We can't survive without you, ma'am. I worried everyone. Elisa feels shy. Luckily, it's not too late. Riart takes her hand. Let's go home. The night the couple returns, the entire ducal mansion is buzzing with joy, whipping up a massive feast. But Elisa zero appetite. Even with anti-nausea meds, she can't hold it back. She jumps up and hurls until she's turning purple. Seeing her suffer like this for the first time, Riart hugs her from behind, absolutely gutted. I'm sorry, my fault again. She tells him she's fine, but she really needs to crash. She barely leaves the room when Thompson corners Riart. When the mistress is pregnant, these are the mandatory steps, sir. First, congratulate her. Second, hype up how happy you are. And finally, flowers. Lots of them. If you miss this window, you're done for. If you're wondering how he knows the guy stays ready, even though he's been mentally prepping this lecture for 27 years, Riart finally has a light bulb moment. The bedroom was absolutely drowning in rose petals. Wifey had just stepped out of her bath and walking into this romantic setup. She was totally starstruck. Then he steps onto the scene, clutching a massive bouquet. Congrats on becoming a mother. But he didn't stop at just the sweet talk. He swore he'd grind to be the best dad ever, then using the baby as the ultimate excuse to stay glued to her side. He announced that from tonight on, they are sharing a bed. While she was still hesitating, he didn't wait. He just made his move and helped her in. He finally got settled, but then total freeze frame. Why? Because she asked if he wanted to touch her belly. The guy was hyped, but absolutely terrified. He was literally thinking, what if I touch it and the baby vanishes? Like, seriously. She grabbed his hand and planted it right on her stomach. Our son is right here. Even though there was zero movement yet, he felt that fatherhood magic kicking in. He started whispering to the bump, welcome to the world. You gotta grow up healthy and strong. The room was just vibrating with happiness. Cut to the morning breeze rolling in. Elisa rolled over, sinking deep into the plush pillow. She opens her eyes to see him sleeping there, and instantly gets shy. But honestly, staring at that handsome face every day, that's better than any prenatal class. She couldn't resist. She reached out to poke his cheek. Snap, his eyes flew open. He caressed her face with a soft, good morning. She was caught in 4K and completely mortified. She didn't expect him to go 0 to 100 so fast. He slammed the call bell, screaming for Annie because he thought his wife had a fever. He was about to drag a doctor in there, but she waved him off. She had to explain that a slightly high temp is totally normal right now. Hearing that a low-grade fever is just a first trimester thing left Riart shook. He looked crushed, blaming himself for being clueless. He decided he needed to hit the library and study up immediately. But as she started eating breakfast, he suddenly jumped up, shouting, "Wait!" Elisa thought it was a major emergency. Turns out, the guy just wanted to say good morning to the baby first. Elisa felt all kinds of fuzzy inside. It finally felt like they were a real-deal family. Her heart was pounding out of her chest. She was floating on cloud 9. But just as the food hit the table, Riart ran into a major glitch. The second a sandwich touched his lips, intense nausea hit him like a truck. He started dry heaving uncontrollably. Breakfast ended up all over the floor. "Riart, what's wrong with you?" But after a quick checkup, the doctor was grinning from ear to ear. Turns out it's Kuvad syndrome, sympathetic pregnancy. It's the ultimate proof of how down bad he is for his wife. Riart definitely learned a lesson today. Only my shoulder. It throbs occasionally. When asked about the triggers, he stroked his chin, dropping a bombshell with a straight face. It only hurts when my wife isn't here. The doctor stood there absolutely flabbergasted. "Unless the Duchess is secretly a healer, you're just making stuff up, Your Grace." Muttering about further research, the physician grabbed his bag and bolted, desperate to escape the suffocating cringe of the lovebirds. Later, Riart gave strict orders to his squad keep the Duchess in the dark. No bad news reaches her ears. Even over lunch when she fretted over his condition, He waved it off, claiming he was fit as a fiddle. Elisa shifted gears. So, what's the status on Viscount Rosas? You know, the mustache-twirling guy they snagged after that massive struggle 2 days ago. But after grilling him for 3 days and nights with zero luck, Riart planned to cut him loose. Then, the mastermind would surely silence him permanently. But the moment the word eliminate left his lips, Riart froze guilt, washing over him. Catching his wife's side-eye, he quickly sugarcoated his murderous intent. Elisa looked pleased, but she had a master plan. Let Rosas go, she proposed. She knew the guy had been doing Marquis Paris's dirty work for ages. But it was strictly business cash for chores. No loyalty, no bond, basically. Snip that financial thread, and their alliance crumbles. The plan: release the hostage first, then swoop in to save his life when things go south. Rosas isn't an idiot. He'll realize his boss left him for dead. That's when we recruit him. He'll come running to our side, tail wagging. After years under the Marquis, he's definitely sitting on some juicy intel. If we bring him into the ducal fold, he'll be a goldmine. A light bulb went off for Riart. No objections here, he smirked. He was all in on his wife's scheme. Meanwhile, deep inside the Holy Temple, a scout rushed in with a report. That creepy grove where the Holy Father sensed bad vibes, totally empty. No people, no suspicious activity. Did I just imagine it? Aiden mused, anxiety creeping in. Suddenly, a voice sliced through the silence. Long time no see, Holy Father. Her Highness the Princess hadn't aged a day, but neither had he, the ring necklace still resting heavy against his chest. Just locking eyes with him sent a wave of nostalgia crashing over her. But the squad wasn't complete without Yuria. Since the sandbox days, the three of them were absolutely joined at the hip, doing everything together. Beyond just number friendship goals, Aiden and Yuria had a love that burned bright. The princess didn't just watch their joy, she lived it. But she also watched their world crumble. 20 years back, the imperial family started pulling the strings on Aiden's bloodline. Right as the duchy hit rock bottom, Aiden went to investigate the mess, only to get blindsided by an assassin in black. Sent him flying, lights out, total blackout. And get this, during that same chaos, the previous emperor was poisoned. The guy sitting on the throne now, he framed his own stepbrother for the crime and executed him without blinking, shamelessly stealing the crown. Yuria got caught in the crossfire, forced to run for her life, eventually getting slapped with a treason charge. When Aiden finally woke up, his world was a dumpster fire. The family was imploding from the inside. And when he finally tracked down his wife, she was just a cold, lifeless body. That's why the princess absolutely loathed her imperial brother and this cursed country. But Aiden, he never bailed on the empire. Probably because the ghost of his wife still lingered in these halls. So who are you praying for today? Aiden asked. The princess let out a faint, knowing smile. She almost said family, but not this time. Today's prayer was for a new friend. Meanwhile, back in a quiet village, Ansel was still waiting like a total innocent. Elisa ghosted the meeting time, but instead of her, some middle-aged guy rolled up. Turns out he's the village doctor, been there his whole life. Saw new neighbors moving in and decided to play the welcoming committee. But the second Ansel mentioned the mansion's owner, the vibe changed. It was the Viscount's only daughter who used to live right there. Hearing that name, the doctor literally dropped his bread. No way, he stammered. Absolutely impossible. What's the issue? Ansel pressed. And then the truth bomb dropped. Elisa died of pneumonia 8 years ago. Cut to the ducal mansion. Elisa's face was painted with pure worry. A few days back, an urgent invite to the Grand Imperial Hunt had landed on their doorstep. Straight from the palace, since his wifey was expecting Riart originally planned to fly solo, but that got vetoed fast. Elisa insisted on tagging along. She knew the imperial family was gunning for the Luberlins, and they definitely wouldn't leave her unborn child alone. Let's be real. A helpless kid is way easier to control than a power couple. She wasn't about to sit there and wait for the axe to fall. It was time to flex the Luberlin's growth over the last 8 years. Riart didn't know how to handle her determination. Fine, we do it your way. Since she was dead set on going, they had to prep like pros. For days, they raided every clothing boutique in the city, shopping until their feet were practically screaming. Elisa was buzzing with excitement for the palace trip tomorrow. She was dead on her feet, but refused to sleep. When she saw her husband come home, she shot out of bed. She claimed she was going to give him that main character energy everyone was waiting for. Truth is, she just wanted to satisfy her own dress-up cravings. While rambling on, she grabbed Riart's hand and pitched her outfit ideas. But before she could finish, her husband obediently ripped his shirt off. Her face went beet red. "Why are you stripping right now?" she mumbled. Riart just shrugged. "What's the big deal? This is our room and you're my wife." Honestly, he had a point. She couldn't argue with that logic. She tried to say something to break the awkward tension, but then she saw the scars mapping his back. Her hand moved on its own, tracing them gently. "Did it hurt when you got these?" When he said he didn't even remember, her heart just broke a little more. "You're going to be a father soon." She wanted him to value himself, to stop shouldering every burden. and to stop suffering in silence. She wanted to carry that weight with him. Riart felt a wave of warmth hit his chest. Their connection just leveled up. The grand imperial hunt arrived in a flash. The noble ladies were doing the most, getting glammed up. Not just to flex their wealth, but to show off how much their husbands adored them. Then there was the woman with the red hair, decked out head to toe in limited edition pieces. Naturally, she became the idol everyone was worshipping. But she only enjoyed the clout for about 3 seconds before the conversation shifted. After all, that was the Luberlin ducal carriage pulling up. It was the Duke's first public appearance since he came of age. The redhead and the rest of the crowd were dying for some drama. Elisa and the Duke probably hate each other, right? But reality hit them like a truck. The Duke wasn't just grown up. He hadn't turned ugly, and he was absolutely spoiling his wife. They looked hopelessly in love and totally in sync, which made the redhead in the back boil with rage. Riart and Elisa's entrance stole the show, sparking a massive wave of jealousy. But it also triggered a misunderstanding with an old friend. Seeing Her Highness the Princess arrive, Elisa started stammering, desperate to explain. But the mood instantly shifts as the imperial family pulls up, forcing everyone to drop into a deep bow. The crown prince and his brothers roll in one by one, but Ansel nowhere to be seen. He totally ghosted her, ruining her plan to clear the air face to face. Luckily, her hubby keeps a protective arm around her, and his attention makes all her worries fade into the background. But the moment gets wrecked when that princess from earlier comes back practically throwing daggers at Richard with her words. Turns out, Elisa saved her daughter once, and since the princess heard some fake news about a divorce, she's trying to recruit Elisa as her new daughter-in-law. Richard is standing there looking totally awkward, but he's saved by the bell, or rather the hunting horn blasting through the air. That's the signal. Elisa practically shoves her husband toward the forest so he doesn't miss the start. She waves off the clingy princess and immediately spins around to apologize to the noblewoman standing nearby. But the lady isn't having it. In her eyes, the only person who needs to apologize is the guy who messed up, the one who made his wife run away from home, Duke. Elisa immediately jumps into defense mode, arguing hard for her man. The lady cracks up laughing. She thinks this frantic defense is just proof that they are deeply down bad for each other. I mean, isn't it natural to defend your spouse? Elisa refuses to admit it's love, but at least the awkward tension with the lady finally clears up. Bestie status unlocked, they head off hand in hand. Meanwhile, cut to Richard, who looks like he's absolutely over this whole thing. The crown prince manages to catch exactly one doe, and his fan club starts worshipping him like he's the god of war. But this so-called god only visited the battlefield once, dragged the whole army down, and loved nothing more than Newsta, stirring up drama between the knights. He didn't even last a full month before running home with his tail between his legs. Richard has zero patience for this fake clout. He just wants to wrap this up and get back to his wifey. Suddenly, the crown prince tries to pick a fight. How come the battlefield hero hasn't caught anything? Not even a dumb animal. Richard hits back with the ultimate shade. I spent too much time fighting real monsters. Weak prey doesn't interest me. Basically implying the prince has zero skill. Seeing the other guy looking like he's about to explode from internal rage, Richard flashes a satisfied smirk and walks away like a total boss. But halfway there, he runs into another headache. It's that snake of a count who's always whispering poison in the emperor's ear. Pure disgust flashes in Richard's eyes. This guy is literally the worst. Richard tries to ignore him, but the count insists he's just speaking for his own good. Ha, you almost got me killed multiple times and now you care about my well-being. Richard spins around glaring daggers. Keep talking trash and I'll rearrange your face. As Richard storms off, the count just stands there, smiling elegantly like a creep. The Duke will understand later, it's really for his benefit. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, the hunt has barely started, and the Empress is hosting her exclusive afternoon tea. On the surface, she's thanking everyone, but in reality, she's engaging in a massive humble brag. She's serving this specific purple flower tea that's so rare only royalty can drink it. You literally cannot buy this stuff. Elisa sees right through these childish power moves. The only silver lining is that this fancy tea is actually safe for pregnant women, but her morning sickness is still kicking. She has to keep a poker face so nobody clocks her pregnancy, forcing herself to pretend she's loving the tea. But how can she chill? It's a room full of scheming women. The Empress fires the first shot at her sister-in-law. Haven't seen you in the capital for ages. Why hang out at the Holy Temple? Instead of coming to the palace, she's basically insinuating the woman is having a fling with a priest. When the Marquise ignores the bait, the Empress tries to laugh it off with an awkward joke. However, the mention of the temple triggers a light bulb moment for Elisa. Ever since the rebellion 20 years ago, the imperial family and the Holy Temple have been in open beef. Even though the royals control the empire, they've never been able to replace the influence the temple holds over the common people. They hate the temple but can't delete them. And as they say, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Elisa's confidence skyrockets. Besides making sure everyone knows that House Luberlin is checking the imperial family's power during this hunt, she wants to build a squad. If she can pull the Holy Temple to her side, She'll have another weapon in her arsenal. She gets so hyped about the plan that she accidentally spills tea on her dress. Annie, who is always on high alert, rushes over to wipe the stain, but nobody expected this simple move to trigger the princess. All because Annie isn't wearing the standard uniform. Looks like the drama is just getting started. The rumors about the ducal house being filthy rich were true, but Elisa was actually banking on them bringing that up. She immediately pivoted to hyping up the job perks at the mansion, promising that anyone who stuck around long enough would score brand new uniforms as a bonus. But let's be real, while she played it cool, this was a calculated move to headhunt top talent. Usually at these high society gigs where the imperial family is the main character, nobody looks anywhere else. So instead of dropping a fortune on her own drip, she figured it was smarter to pour that budget into the staff. By making her knights and servants look snatched, she was flexing how good the ducal house treats its people. The snobby nobles might not blink, but the regular workers, oh, they were definitely turning green with envy. I mean, who wouldn't want a job upgrade? Seeing the bait was taken, she casually dropped the news about discovering massive mines in ducal territory and needing investors. Watching the ladies' reactions, she instantly clocked who had zero say at home versus the girl bosses actually controlling their family fortune. With a laser-focused read on her potential clients, the women started buzzing with excitement. But the Empress, she was salty about losing the spotlight. She let out a fake cough, trying to kill the vibe and change the subject. Yet seeing that hungry look in their eyes to do business, Elisa knew she had this in the bag. However, she never guessed her biggest enemy would be a dessert tray. The second that rich butter scent hit her nose, her stomach did a complete backflip. Fighting back the urge to hurl, she shot up, but the room started spinning immediately. Suddenly, a strong arm caught her mid-fall. Apologies, my wife hasn't been feeling 100% lately. As the crowd gasped, Riart scooped his wife up like a princess. Later, ladies, and just like that, he made a smooth, legendary exit. The princess was so triggered, her lip was quivering, but Riart was too busy pampering his wife. Eyes full of worry, he pulled out some candy. He didn't expect the crown prince to roast him for being a decent husband, basically calling him whipped. Seeing Riart holding his wife so tight, the prince smirked, mocking him for being a simp who's totally wrapped around her finger. Word on the street is you haven't sealed the deal yet. Are you shooting blanks or what? Riart was fighting the urge to snap right in front of his wife and unborn kid, but Elisa wasn't having it. She put on a sad face and whimpered. Our baby would be so heartbroken hearing that. The crowd went into full panic mode, but then she burst out laughing, declaring their wedding night wasn't just spicy, it was productive. They made a whole human. Growing a tiny human is exhausting. So we're bouncing. The crown prince's eyes bugged out, totally shook. Riart spent 7 years on the battlefield and still beat him to fatherhood, landing a bullseye on the very first try. Even the two simps behind him couldn't help but whisper, damn, looks like the crown prince is the one with the dysfunction. The prince was absolutely livid. This kind of trashy guy, who has zero skills and just abuses his power to start drama. Yeah, Elisa totally despised him. But her little clapback had Riart feeling major secondhand embarrassment. How did you say that with a straight face? She apologized, knowing it was technically too early to drop the pregnancy bomb publicly, but she wasn't about to let her man get roasted. Besides, no lies detected right. That night was genuinely magical. Elisa side-eyed her husband, bracing for a lecture, but she didn't expect him to be. Blushing like crazy, chuckling, and totally agreeing with her, but come nightfall, the laughter died. After tucking his wife in, a maid delivered a letter for Elisa. Seeing it was signed by Ansel, he seriously wanted to torch the thing. Even though his wife claimed they were just besties, there was no guarantee that dude didn't have ulterior motives like waiting for a divorce so he could slide in. If he confesses something like that, Elisa is going to be so disappointed in me. While he was spiraling, his wife suddenly woke up. Defeated, he handed over the letter like a good boy, watching her read it with such intense focus. The green-eyed monster was eating him alive. Even the next day at work, he couldn't stop obsessing over that note. Turns out Ansel had slid into her DMs asking to meet that afternoon. Even while talking to his secretary, his brain was checked out. He dropped everything and clocked out immediately. He tried to tell himself he was being dramatic, but his feet carried him straight to the bedroom, calling for Elisa. He kicked open the door and froze. His wife looked absolutely stunning, rocking a pink dress. Seeing her run toward him all happy-go-lucky, his jealousy snapped. That dress looks terrible on you. You better go change. Look, Richard knew he was being petty, but he just couldn't handle the thought of Ansel laying eyes on his stunning wife. Especially since that guy had been crushing on Elisa since they were in diapers. But before Richard could even finish his sentence, the waterworks started. Can't you just say, I look pretty, that it fits perfectly, she snapped, voice cracking. Well, guess what? I'm wearing it. I want this dress on right now. Richard was totally blindsided by this explosion. He panicked trying to do damage control, but she literally kicked him out of the room. He banged on the door shouting, I was wrong, my bad, but the only response was silence. The guilt was eating him alive. He felt like such a moron. How could he let his jealousy make him say something so stupid? Elisa was probably going through hell with this pregnancy. After stewing in his own regret, he knocked again, voice soft. I'm sorry. Go ahead and chat with Ansel. Take your time. Inside, Elisa's face was still puffy from crying, but she finally calmed down. She rang for the maids to come fix her ruined makeup. She was still stinging on the inside, though. The maids tried to hype her up, insisting that His Excellency the Duke has zero fashion sense. But Elisa wasn't unreasonable. She knew she'd kind of lost it, and acted like a total brat over nothing. The truth, neither she nor Richard realized this was classic pregnancy hormones at work. Those wild chemical shifts that turn moms-to-be into emotional roller coasters, swinging from depressed to furious, with zero warning. They say every pregnant woman goes through this, the maids assured her, hearing that Elisa finally got her mojo back. While they were finishing her touch-up, Ansel pulled up to the ducal mansion. The kid had glowed up. He was a big-shot businessman now. The butler led him toward the back garden. But as Ansel walked, he casually glanced up and froze. He caught a glimpse of a dark, brooding figure staring down from the second-floor window. He knew the Duke was intense, but this was next-level terrifying. He didn't expect the guy to come back from the battlefield even colder than before. Oh my God, Ansel thought. Elisa's life must be a nightmare. Remembering how she canceled their last meeting, his anxiety spiked. He was terrified she'd been caught trying to make a run for it. So the second he saw Elisa, he skipped the small talk and dropped the big question. Is this marriage happy? Elisa didn't really know how to define happiness, but she definitely wasn't miserable. Ansel let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. But he still couldn't wrap his head around Elisa's taste. She thought that icy Duke was pure. Where in what universe? The real shocker dropped next Elisa was expecting. Ansel managed to offer a stiff congratulations, trying to keep his face straight. He had to swallow the words he really wanted to scream. With her focusing on the pregnancy, there was no way he could drop the bomb about what he saw at the villa. Not right now. So he kept his mouth shut. After their chat, Elisa personally walked him out. They were laughing and chatting all the way to the gate. And naturally, Richard was watching, and his jealousy meter instantly redlined. The next day, Elisa headed to the Holy Temple. The Marchioness had set up a meeting for her there. When she arrived, she spotted the Marchioness deep in conversation with a blonde guy. Just as Elisa was about to say hi, the Marchioness beat her to it. She introduced the man as the Pope. Elisa's eyes lit up. This was her chance to network. She immediately offered a donation of 2 million gold. Big mistake. The Pope saw right through her little game and shut down the offer without skipping a beat. She pressed him for a reason, but the guy was brutally honest. He told her straight up he couldn't give her the political clout she wanted, and he warned her to stop trying to play the temple. Elisa felt super awkward. Her whole master plan relied on using the temple's popularity. She wanted to buy reputation with donations to flex on the royal family. The plan was to donate first, then cozy up to the Pope later. But now it looked like she had to scrap that idea completely. If the Pope took her cash, the temple would get dragged into a messy power struggle. Even if the church was broke, the Pope refused every cent to keep their hands clean and stay totally neutral. He'd held that line for 20 years, just to protect the believers. Elisa realized she was dealing with a pro. A guy this smart and principled wasn't going to fold easily. But that didn't mean he was untouchable. Time to switch gears. She decided to come clean. Okay, my intentions aren't pure, but I'm not just doing this for myself. She brought up the orphans the temple took in after the war. Don't those kids need help? Once the Luberlin family donates, she argued the royal family will feel the pressure to match it. It's a win-win, so please use us. She was basically telling him he could keep his neutrality while exploiting her money. The Pope hesitated. But just as he was thinking it over, a young priest burst in, ruining the moment. The Pope used the distraction to bail. Elisa knew she'd struck out. The Marchioness tried to comfort her, but Elisa wasn't actually that upset. She'd already calculated the odds and had a backup plan ready to go. The very next day, she was back at the temple. She'd done her homework and stalked the Pope's schedule perfectly. Step 1, stage a totally accidental run-in. At first, aligning with the temple was just a calculated strategic move. But seeing those orphans who had lost everything, that hit different. She genuinely wanted to help from the bottom of her heart. She had mad respect for what the temple was pulling off. I mean, giving these kids an education and keeping them safe. That is literally the imperial family's job description. But nope, the temple was shouldering that whole burden solo. And they'd been grinding for over 20 years. Honestly, without the Marchioness backing them up, they probably would have folded ages ago. So to get the Pope to stop doubting her vibe, she had to prove she was for real. She staked out a spot where she knew he would walk by. And while she was racking her brain trying to make the meeting look accidental, Annie chimed in. Why not just admire the roadside flowers? Solid plan. But then she spotted this one lonely flower. It was totally withered, probably dying because it had strayed too far from the garden. Instant heartbreak for both of them. Annie rushed off to grab some water to save the little guy, and Elisa thought, yeah, let's do this. But as she watched Annie run off, she didn't even notice the faint blue glow radiating from her own body. That light, slowly condensed into shimmering water droplets falling right onto the petals. When she turned back around, she gasped. The dead flower had snapped back to life instantly, now glowing with a magical golden aura. Before she could figure out what the heck just happened, her target appeared. She scrambled to her feet to intercept him. When he asked what business she had at the temple, she panicked and used the "I'm here to pray" card. She braced herself for an interrogation, but he just gave her a quick, simple blessing. Then he dipped, mumbling something about being busy. Polite, sure, but totally icy. She didn't really have an excuse to chase him down. But Elisa, she doesn't quit. She hyped herself up, deciding to crash early and try again tomorrow. She definitely didn't expect Riart to suddenly show up holding a storybook, claiming he wanted to read to the baby. He looked super nervous, like a puppy, afraid of getting kicked out. Elisa realized she had been sleeping early every night just to avoid the awkward vibes after their fight. Since he was practically waving a white flag, Elisa caved. Fine, go ahead and read. Riart lit up like a Christmas tree. He sat on the edge of the bed, cracking the book open with deadly seriousness. Polly, Polly. To the north of the forest, there was a forest that no one had stepped in. His robotic, choppy delivery was so bad, Elisa was turning beet red, trying not to burst out laughing. How could anyone make a fairy tale sound this boring? But seeing him try so hard, it was kind of adorable. She never expected her stoic husband to take prenatal education this seriously. Watching him focus, she couldn't help herself. She reached out and touched him like he was the most precious thing in the world. He looked at her totally confused, and she just stammered that Riart had a hair on his face. Smooth right. Thinking she was losing her mind, she dropped the "I gotta wake up early for the temple" excuse and dove under the covers. Since the accidental run-in strategy was a total flop, she switched tactics. New game plan: become a regular at the temple, praying and taking care of the sick orphans. Today she brought the kids some gourmet chocolates. Seeing a pregnant woman working this hard, even the young priest felt a pang of guilt. Luckily, the Pope stopped dodging her, and even though the guy wasn't exactly a sweet tooth, he took the chocolate anyway, watching how natural she was with the kids. That was her moment. Please use me. Use the Luberlin name. The Pope looked like he was finally cracking. Meanwhile, back at the palace, the crown prince and his wife were getting absolutely roasted by the Empress. Turns out when the Empress heard about Elisa's baby bump, she went ballistic. The reason: her own son and daughter-in-law had been married 4 years with 0 heirs to show for it. Yet here comes someone fresh off the battlefield. And boom, instant baby. Under that crushing parental pressure, the couple thought they just had to grin and bear it. But the emperor wasn't letting it slide. The crown prince wasn't even sure if he had any illegitimate kids running around. So the emperor ordered a manhunt to find any secret offspring immediately. Talk about stress for the crown princess. She tried to drag the prince to bed that night, but he wouldn't even look at her. She was fuming, but she couldn't lash out at him, so she directed all that hate straight at Elisa. Luckily for her, a maid came in with news they found where that child was living. Perfect, she sneered. Take him out. Now. Meanwhile, Elisa was browsing a bookstore for fairy tales when she spotted a kid acting super shady and covered in grime. He slipped a book under his shirt. Elisa reached out and gently stopped him. She patiently explained that stealing wasn't the move. Come on, hand over the book, kiddo. Just then, the bookstore owner popped up, all smiles. But the second he saw the book in the little beggar's hands, his face twisted. He snatched the kid up by the collar and raised a hand to strike him. A slap like that? It would crush a kid that small. Elisa wasn't having it. She stepped in to stop the violence, but the owner spat at her to get lost. The audacity. Being rude to the Lady of Luberlin. The moment she dropped her name, the guy folded like a lawn chair. My apologies, but you really shouldn't protect trash like him. To the shop owner, a thief was a thief. Leopards don't change their spots. But Elisa wasn't buying into that toxic mindset. Maybe it was the baby fever kicking in, but her mama bear instincts took over. She stood firmly in the kid's corner. Let's be real, the owner was the villain here. 0 parenting, and his first instinct was to throw hands at a toddler. Absolutely not. She pointed a finger right at his face, laying down the law she'd cover the cash, but he needed to apologize to the boy. Immediately. The guy had no choice but to fold, but he had no clue that one forced apology was the butterfly effect that would rewrite this kid's entire destiny. She whisked the boy away to a quiet bakery alley. Seeing his skeletal frame, it was obvious he hadn't seen a decent meal in ages. It broke her heart, but then a massive sense of déjà vu hit her. That blazing crimson hair. Hey kiddo, what's your name, Leon? The tiny voice froze her in her tracks. Oh no. It turns out this isn't just a random orphan, it's the illegitimate son of that scumbag crown prince, meaning he's the future arch-nemesis of her own son. Suddenly, those imperial knights wandering the streets earlier made terrifying sense. Her gut screamed danger. In the canon storyline, the imperial family puts a hit out on the prince's secret kid to erase the shame. But the crown princess, she didn't wait for orders. She decided to clear the board herself and went rogue. It was supposed to be a dark, stormy night where little Leon gets cornered by the princess's hit squad in a dead-end alley. In the original timeline, he unleashes a firestorm to survive, but loses control and torches the entire village. Total collateral damage. That disaster shook the whole empire. Leon gets dragged to the palace, kicking off a childhood just as traumatic as her husband Riart's. Elisa couldn't stand it. A kid with no mom facing that kind of darkness. There was no way she was walking away from this. But she couldn't exactly stash a royal bastard at the Duke's mansion. Then a light bulb went off. She knew the perfect sanctuary. Leon, trust me, the kid nodded. The assassins lurking in the shadows were left completely dumbfounded as their target just walked away. Thankfully, they made it to their destination in one piece. The moment Elisa saw the Pope, she finally let out a breath she'd been holding. The plan was for the church to take him in, but once the Pope realized who the kid was, he started getting cold feet. Elisa nudged Leon. Show him. The kid let out sparks of magic and the Pope's jaw hit the floor. He couldn't believe this little street urchin was carrying imperial blood, but the kid was a walking target for the crown princess. Despite the sob story, the Pope was ready to say no. Beautiful flames still burn, and this kid was a walking fire hazard. Especially since the boy had zero control over his nuke-level powers. It was too risky. This was exactly the conflict from the original story. Elisa knew the script by heart. That's exactly why you need to take him, she argued. With your guidance, that deadly fire could be the warmth that saves people. The Pope frowned. Why trust me? Elisa smiled. Because you're the only decent man left in this city. Bullseye. He caved. But there was a catch. Elisa had 1 week to bring him receipts on the crown princess's dirty deeds. After all, harboring a royal bastard was high risk, zero reward for the temple. He needed leverage. Elisa accepted the quest instantly. Back home, she went straight to strategy mode, digging through her memories of the novel. The crown princess was smart. She didn't use her family's soldiers. She hired mercenaries from a specific underground guild. Simple enough, but a noblewoman can't just stroll into a mercenary den without raising flags. Then her husband walked in. Lightbulb moment number 2. Why do the dirty work when you have a powerful husband? She decided to ask him to handle it. She was ready to spill everything, the plot, the secret kid, all of it. It sounded insane. Assassinations, illegitimate children, zero evidence. But Riart, he didn't even blink. Consider it done. And then he dropped the smoothest line ever. I believe whatever you say. Even if you're lying, I'm all in. That unconditional trust. The absolute green flag energy. Elisa's heart started doing gymnastics in her chest. She tried to respond, but the blushing was too intense. She faked a cough to hide the awkwardness and bolted for bed. Riart watched her go, chuckling at her glowing red ears. He was totally enjoying this side of her. Not long after, he walked into the mercenary guild alone, demanding to speak to the manager. Boss music playing. The mercenaries charged in. They were shaky at first, but these guys weren't total rookies. One reckless fool lunged with a short sword, but our guy barely twitched. He sidestepped and snatched the attacker from behind. Wham! One solid hit sent the merc crashing down, leaving the rest of the squad frozen in shock. Riart didn't scream. He just repeated his demand cold. Finally, the boss showed his face. Riart cut the small talk immediately. Call off the hit squad hired by the crown princess. Now. When Scarface tried to play dumb, Riart's patience snapped. The air pressure dropped and a massive shockwave nearly blew the guy off his feet. Glass shattered behind him. Scarface realized he messed up big time as he watched Riart step closer menacingly. Defy me, and you're all dead. With just that one brutal sentence, he got the intel he needed. He wanted to rush this proof back to his wife, but just as he turned to leave, he felt eyes on him. Ugh, annoying. He quickly ducked into a side alley to shake the tail. Then poof, he materialized right behind the stalker. Looking for me, Count Olden. Surprised the guy in black was Ansel. Ansel didn't flinch though, claiming he had major news that the Duke absolutely needed to hear. And Ansel dropped the nuke. The real Elisa died 8 years ago. The girl in the portrait at the villa didn't match the childhood version of Elisa. A literal chill ran down Ansel's spine. Who exactly was this woman living in the mansion? The question haunted him. He wanted to find Riart and spill the tea, but he hesitated. He didn't plan on being called a stalking rat by his rival. Plus, Riart was a savage. What would he do to Elisa if he found out she was a fake? After overthinking it, Ansel decided to gamble. How much do you actually love her? Riart, seeing Ansel as competition, slammed his fist on the table in a rage. You trying to steal my wife? Ansel held his ground. Your answer determines if I tell you the truth. Riart looked confused. So Ansel hesitated before finally spilling everything. The renovations, the old house, and the chat with that doctor. Elisa died of lung disease 8 years ago. Crazy, right? Riart wanted to deny it, but he had felt something was off. Back then, too. And that portrait in the villa, it sealed the deal. He had to believe it. Riart's heart sank. If this intel was real, it meant the woman sleeping next to him was an imposter. But his first instinct wasn't anger. It was fear for her. If this got out, she was in danger. He had to protect her. The thought of his wife getting hurt, unacceptable. Riart demanded more details. But Ansel clamped up. He was terrified the girl would get into trouble too. He wanted to tell Elisa first. But he couldn't break her heart. That's why I'm telling you instead. Riart let out a breath he'd been holding, actually praising his rival for doing the right thing. While Ansel was freaking out, the Duke was ice cold. Truth or not, Elisa is still the most important person in my family. That answer made Ansel feel like a total clown. He really thought this was his chance to swoop in and steal Elisa. But nope, the Duke's love was just as deep as his. He felt crushed, but honestly, relieved for Elisa. Riart actually respected the honesty, which cooled his jealousy a bit. Just don't show that energy in front of her. Warning delivered. Riart raced back home. He found his wife tossing and turning in her sleep, and gently stroked her hair. He knew the late Duke wasn't stupid. The old man arranged this marriage, so he wouldn't have been tricked easily. Plus, Elisa had amnesia back then. Even if she got her memories back, maybe she forgot the details. The only one who knew the full story was that crafty, old Duke, and he was 6 feet under. But wait, there was one loose end who might have answers. The old man's vice-general advisor. Riart snapped orders to Thompson find him, fast. Meanwhile, the Merc Guild's secret letter canceling the hit landed on the Crown Princess's desk. She also heard Elisa had saved the kid. She completely lost it, smashing teacups in a blind rage, but inside that chaos, a darker, nastier plot started brewing. Early the next morning, an invite arrived for Elisa. The Crown Princess wanted a chat at the palace. Obviously, a trap banquet. Elisa smirked. Perfect. Just what she wanted. A second later, she rolled up to the palace solo, spotting a maid waiting like a vulture at the gate. The Crown Princess was pressing for this meetup way harder than Elisa expected. Following the maid, she stepped into the lion's den. Greetings, Your Highness. The Crown Princess dropped a flawless curtsy. Classic mean girl move, looking elegant and polite on the surface. She even made a big deal out of thanking Elisa for visiting, claiming she knew how draining pregnancy could be. Total shade or actual concern. Yeah, right. You're too kind, but let's be real. This is the first time you've ever summoned me. Consider me shook. On the outside, besties having tea. On the inside, the gloves were officially off. Let the mind games begin. Her Highness offered some tea with a sickeningly sweet smile, but that blend was strictly off limits for pregnant women. Elisa wasn't falling for that rookie trap. Playing the morning sickness card, she politely passed. After a few more rounds of fake niceties, the princess finally cracked and showed her true colors. Rumor has it you've been sponsoring some orphans, Duchess. Once Elisa nodded, the woman's eyes practically glowed with a manic desperation. She was way too eager to get the specific name of the orphanage, claiming she just wanted to do something meaningful. Yeah, sure, January. But why are you obsessing over that specific one? Elisa fired back. Caught off guard, the Crown Princess totally froze, words failing her. Watching her squirm, Elisa flashed a dazzling smile and casually mentioned she supports every orphanage in the Empire. Good luck finding him now. That shut her up real quick. Since the passive-aggressive route failed, she went full psycho. Where are you hiding that child? She looked ready to rip someone's throat out, but Elisa kept playing innocent. Enraged, the princess slammed the table, sending the teacup flying. She screamed threats about snitching to the emperor, but Elisa remained unbothered. Since when is taking care of parentless children a crime? Or are you implying I'm hiding His Majesty's grandson bold claim with 0 receipts? For a country bumpkin viscount's daughter, you sure have some nerve. The princess looked about 2 seconds away from throwing hands, but Elisa just sat there watching the meltdown like it was a boring movie. Just as the woman was about to explode, Elisa slapped a piece of paper right in her face. Boom. Cold, hard evidence. Proof that the Crown Princess herself had hired hitmen. It didn't matter how Elisa got the intel. What mattered was the tea she just spilled. A sitting princess trying to off an innocent kid? Not a good look. Listen close if you value your precious life. You'll stop hurting innocent children. Warning delivered. Elisa tucked the evidence back into her purse, right in front of her face. Boss move. Flashing one last brilliant smile, she politely chirped, "See you around," and turned to leave. Watching Elisa strut away, the Crown Princess had no choice but to swallow her rage. She was completely checkmated. The second the door clicked shut, the sound of shattering porcelain echoed from inside. Just as Elisa predicted, the arrogant brat had nothing left but a temper tantrum. A few days later, Elisa was gearing up for another trip to the temple. Just as she was heading out, Riart got super clingy, insisting he tag along. He was dying to meet the mysterious kid. Maybe his own rough childhood made him protective, but he was stressed about the boy's future. The kid was tiny, but packed some serious, unusual power. He knew Elisa wanted to respect the boy's wishes, just wanting him healthy and happy. And if that meant the kid stayed with them, Riart was all in. But the moment they met, the kid kept calling Elisa big sis over and over. Riart blinked. Wait, wasn't this kid supposed to be a redhead? Turns out the boy was wearing a wig, posing as some distant relative of the Pope. They barely got a word in. Before Elisa ditched Riart to babysit the kid solo, the boy only wanted her, but she cut him off. "I have grown-up stuff to discuss with the Pope." Fine. Riart stood there like an abandoned puppy, watching his wife leave. Then he heard it. Uncle. The emotional damage was instant. Literally seconds ago, Elisa was big sis, but he gets uncle still. Leon was too adorable, inviting him to his room to play. How could he be mad at that face? Leon tilted his head, his little brain working hard on a puzzle. Our uncle and big sis friends? Riart shook his head. No, we're husband and wife. He didn't expect that answer to make the kid burst into tears. Thank God for pocket candy. Kids are simple creatures, one sweet treat, and the waterworks stopped instantly. Just like that, they were best buds. Once they got to the room, Leon sprinted to the fireplace, vibrating with energy. Sparks flew from his tiny hands. Riart thought he was playing arsonist, but Leon beamed. I just want you to be warmer, uncle. Seeing the kid so earnest broke Riart's heart. Controlling magic at that age, it meant only one thing. He had either survived life-or-death situations or endured extreme psychological torture to unlock that kind of power. If even Elisa pitied this boy, how could Riart not feel for him? Silently, he gathered wind magic in his own palm. Mixing his wind with the boy's sparks, the flames roared to life. Look, uncle, I started the fire. Riart gently patted the boy's head. Yeah, it's really warm. Meanwhile, the Pope stood before the divine statue. Sensing Elisa's arrival, he prepared himself. He had a massive secret to confess. After a long, draining day, they finally made it home. Elisa stepped out of a bath feeling totally refreshed. She checked the mirror and froze. Her pajamas were a little too sheer. She turned to change, but of course that's exactly when her husband walked in. She was rocking a brand new fit, but catching her husband's stunned expression, a wave of secondhand embarrassment washed over her. She panicked, terrified he'd think she was trying to thirst trap him on purpose. But her husband, he kept it 100% casual. He even tenderly draped a blanket over her shoulders. Her shyness instantly flipped to annoyance. Okay, sure, the temperature was rising, but still. Shouldn't a husband hype up his wife's new look? Call her gorgeous. With that in mind, she pressed Riart for a reaction. Does this look bad? No, it suits you. You look beautiful. A bit stiff, sure, but at least he passed the vibe check. But then he dropped the bomb. But your belly looks like it's sticking out. She froze, brain completely short-circuited. As he tried to lull her to sleep, his words turned into white noise. All she could focus on was belly sticking out. Was he low-key calling her fat? The more she spiraled, the madder she got. Suddenly, she shot up in bed and smacked Riart's arm like a woman possessed. Seeing his bewildered face, Elisa stammered out a lame excuse. Nothing. I think there was a mosquito. Riart was left totally clueless. It felt satisfying in the moment, but by the next morning, major regret kicked in. It was a harmless comment, yet she had crashed out for no reason. It felt like she had dressed up specifically to impress her husband. But why? She didn't need to do that. After all, nobody tries that hard to impress a friend. She was gaslighting herself. But then it hit her. Something was definitely off. She couldn't stop her husband's handsome face from living rent-free in her mind. Was she actually catching feelings, having impure thoughts? It was a massive revelation. After deep diving into her emotions, she finally decoded her feelings for Riart. Turns out, this wasn't just friendly affection. It was full-blown attraction to the opposite sex, and it was intense. But what was the play here? She had no idea how to face him. Just the thought of sharing a room that night made her face turn tomato red. Right then, a voice called out, Elisa, why did she have to run into Riart right now? Sensing his usual concern, she lost her cool. She skillfully swatted her husband's hand away. Let's just go back to the room. But this glitch in her behavior freaked Riart out. He was convinced his wife was sick. Luckily, the doc gave the green light, no issues, baby's healthy. He added that if she felt the baby kicking, she should interact with the little one. Since they were in the stable trimester, they could take trips to boost their mood. The two rookie parents listened with intense focus. But when the doctor dropped the hint about appropriate intimacy, they both turned 50 shades of red. After the doc dipped, Elisa's heart was racing. How about an outing? With a slight blush, she pitched the idea of a picnic. But to a certain someone, she just looked feverish again. So Riart shut it down. Let's go later. Elisa pushed back, but the doctor said it's fine. Riart wasn't having it. What if it hurts the baby? Hearing his logical breakdown, Elisa got salty. What about me? The baby matters, but I don't. Dropping that mic, Elisa spun around and marched back to her room, leaving Riart standing there, frozen and clueless. After cooling down, the guilt hit Elisa hard, but she really couldn't control her mood swings. Riart is definitely sick of me by now. She didn't expect him to be the one to chase after her, calling out her name. He dropped to one knee. That was a curveball, but what shocked her even more was that Riart actually had the guts to spill his feelings. Since it's the first time in my life I've had someone this precious. I don't know what I'm doing. Could you love me even just a little? His voice cracked, sounding so broken and humble. Like you actually mean it. Elisa felt a lump in her throat, her heart doing backflips in her chest. Did he catch the same feelings she did? She was too scared to bet on it. She looked down and whispered, I don't hate you. Actually, I like you a lot. But my way of liking you might be different from yours. Riart's eyes lit up instantly. He hadn't expected this. He thought she wanted distance. He bolted up and crushed Elisa in a tight hug. Is it true? You really like me? This 6-foot-tall man looked like a little kid who just got forgiven, even if his wife wouldn't fully admit it yet. It didn't matter. I'm gonna prove my feelings. The first I love you in 7 years of marriage. Elisa still couldn't wrap her head around it. She was terrified he was just saying it out of duty. But I love you simply because you're Elisa, and I fell for you a long time ago. Then why did you never say it? Seeing his wife crying a river, Riart apologized over and over. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Truth is, it wasn't that Riart didn't want to. He was just too scared, terrified that his love would be one-sided. He was terrified that his overwhelming love was suffocating her, pushing her away. But looking back, that was all on him. Gently brushing the tears from the corners of her eyes, he bared his soul to her once again. Revenge used to be his only oxygen, consuming his entire existence. But the moment she stepped into his life, that cold, empty void was flooded with warmth. She was literally walking sunshine. Falling for her wasn't a choice. It was inevitable. That burning thirst for vengeance faded without him even noticing. Now, his only mission is happiness with her and their son. This isn't just a goal, it's my deepest wish. So, will you help me make this real? Elisa was an emotional wreck, fresh tears welling up. She reached out, rising on her tiptoes, trying desperately to match the intensity of his burning heart. Finally, she wrapped her arms around the love of her life, sealing it with a kiss. The next morning, she couldn't wipe that secret smile off her face. So this is what being truly loved feels like. Pure bliss. Suddenly, knock knock. She assumed it was Riart. Nope, it was Anne holding a letter straight from the palace. And oh, look, an invitation was attached. It was a summons to a special tea party right before the Foundation Festival. She remembered this event usually happens in early July, but throwing a tea party right now, that timing is super suspicious. Plus, neither the Crown Princess nor the Empress were exactly her biggest fans. Why would they want her there? Considering their last palace visit was a total disaster, this screamed trap. Actually, it's definitely about that incident. She told Annie to RSVP, yes, bring it on. She also fired off a letter to the Count's estate. That confident glint in her eyes, she's got a master plan brewing. The Empress's fancy tea party had one strict rule: wear a pink gown. Except Elisa's invite said yellow, and the Marchioness hers said blue. Classic sabotage. To keep them from comparing notes, the Crown Princess even faked the start time on their invites. Petty level 100. Tea time was fast approaching. Everyone was seated, except our two targets. The Crown Princess was practically glowing, thinking she was a genius. She was already daydreaming about crushing them with her mother-in-law's help. She shot a side-eye at her lackey, who caught the signal instantly. Oh no, we're about to start. Where on earth is the young Duchess of Luberlin? The maid stirred the pot, getting the crowd annoyed at Luberlin. Cue the Empress making her grand entrance. She turned to her daughter-in-law, demanding to know what the holdup was. The Crown Princess sighed, acting all helpless. Well, the Duchess promised she'd come, so I'm sure she'll be here. The crowd gasped. Oh my God, you're so forgiving, Your Highness. Soaking up the praise she tried, and failed to hide a smug smirk. The royal duo was really selling the performance. Suddenly, oops, sorry we're late. Elisa and the Marchioness strolled in, absolutely beaming. Traffic was a nightmare, you know. Not only were they on time, they were rocking the correct dress code. The Crown Princess froze. How is she going to explain this failure to the Empress? She didn't realize Elisa saw right through her low IQ scheme. Dress code, start time, a simple fact check exposed the whole lie. Frowning, Elisa decided it was time for her own Oscar-worthy performance. Actually, the time on my invitation was wrong, and the dress code was different. Weird, right? Did your maid think we have beef or something? I mean, seriously, good help is so hard to find. Whispers started flying through the crowd. The Crown Princess was fuming, but had to keep her cool. She needed a scapegoat fast. Slap. She backhanded her own maid across the face. How dare you sabotage me like this? She turned to Elisa. I am so sorry, Duchess. Predictably, throwing her servant under the bus worked like a charm. The brainless crowd immediately turned on the poor maid who was begging for mercy. It's fine, Elisa, cut in. I forgive you. We all make mistakes. She looked at the princess. Please calm down, Your Highness. Her eyes, however, said, I know what you did. The Crown Princess was about to explode from the humiliation, the tension in the room, suffocating. Luckily, a sharp-witted lady-in-waiting quickly changed the subject, distracting the crowd. The rest of the party went smoothly, but meanwhile across town, at the family gathering, Riart was dealing with some absolute bottom feeders. This scrawny beanpole of a guy had the nerve to suggest donating the Foundation Festival's surplus cash to the royal family. The guy didn't see it coming. Riart shut that proposal down with a single brutal vote. Denied. The room exploded into chaos, but Riart, he just stood up and ended the meeting, completely ignoring the guy cursing daggers into his back. The second he stepped out of that boardroom, he got the intel. They found him. Let's roll, he said. Here's the tea. Riart recently found out that his wife, the woman he'd protected for 7 years, was technically a dead woman walking on paper. And the only person who knew the real story was the former Duke, who was long gone. Riart had to track down the old Duke's right-hand man. He needed to know where exactly did the old man find Elisa. Plot twist, the assistant was clueless. He admitted he just forged a fake identity for the lady because he was ordered to. But things weren't adding up. The old Duke had ditched his knights and Riart to enter the Holy Tree Forest solo. Rumor had it he was chasing a sage, some legend from a specific family who achieved enlightenment and literally merged with the Holy Tree. But why the meetup? The assistant had zero idea. He didn't even know if the Duke found the guy. But the day the old man carried an unconscious Elisa back to the estate, he dropped a bombshell. I found the answer. It sounded like Elisa herself was the solution to a lifetime of questions. Hearing that gave Riart literal chills. He didn't have the full picture yet, but the Holy Tree Forest was definitely holding the missing piece of the puzzle. He cut the small talk and barked an order to Thompson, tear that forest apart. I want every single clue found. With the Foundation Festival only a few days away, the clock was ticking. Elisa was grinding at the Holy Temple every day, helping with the prep work. She was a machine with unlimited energy until she spotted a tiny figure crouching in the dirt. Had to be little Leon. He was covered in grime, clutching a mini shovel like a pro. When she asked what was up, he spilled the beans. He claimed he was weeding with total confidence. Buddy, those are definitely flowers you're ripping out. Seeing him so proud warmed her heart. Go get cleaned up, she said. But the kid took off like a rocket. He wasn't looking where he was going. Bam! He slammed right into someone's knees and landed hard on his butt. Elisa's blood ran cold. Of all people, he had to crash into the Crown Prince Leon's biological father. Hey, brat, did the temple forget to teach you manners? The prince sneered. Major villain vibes. Leon squeaked out a sorry, but that just made the guy madder. We donate a fortune to this place, and this is how you raise these morons. You're being too harsh on the child. Your Highness, Elisa fired back. Big mistake. He turned his sights on the young duchess. Speaking of which, move. He pointed a finger. He was targeting the trembling kid clinging to Elisa. I need to teach this brat a lesson. My suit costs more than his life. I am so sorry. You have a big heart. Please let it slide. Elisa practically begged, swallowing her pride to save the kid. The prince pretended to be gracious, but couldn't help one last dig. Pathetic. Only stupid parents could raise a kid that dumb. Elisa had never seen someone roast themselves so hard. But Leon didn't know the irony. He was just hurt. My mom is not stupid, he shouted, and his tiny hands started sparking with rage. That was royal fire magic. Disaster mode on. Leon's secret identity was seconds away from being exposed. No, Elisa grabbed Leon's hands instantly, not realizing she was releasing her own energy to smother the flames. She was terrified the secret would get out. Lucked out the crown prince was too dim to notice the magic show. He stormed off to meet the Pope. Crisis averted. For now. But Elisa was panicked. Did I hurt you? Leon's eyes were swimming with tears. But weirdly, his hands were pristine. No burns, nothing. Like the fire never happened. While she was puzzling over that, Riart strode in. Leon threw his hands up and sprinted toward him. He was filthy, but Riart didn't care. He scooped the kid up. Total dad material right there. He started wiping the kid's grimy hands, praising him. But then Leon dropped a truth bomb. He pointed straight at Elisa's stomach. Sister's tummy has poop on it. The baby inside is gonna be sad. If you say that, then where do babies actually come from? The ultimate dreaded question. Elisa froze, shooting a desperate look at Riart, who looked just as cornered. Out of options, she went with the classic white lie. It happens when you kiss someone you really, really like. The kid blinked. So do you like Uncle? Of course. I love Big Sister too. Wait, if I kiss Big Sister, will we have a baby? Little Lion's eyes lit up, absolutely hyped, and puckered up ready to test the theory. Elisa's soul left her body. She frantically waved her hands, diving into damage control mode. No, there has to be true love. But even as she said it, her brain short-circuited biology doesn't exactly check for a marriage license. Her face burned 50 shades of red. Her mind raced. Wait, if you kiss without love, does the baby still appear? Logic was failing. You can't just kiss random people. The kid tilted his head. Oh. So Big Sister didn't love Uncle before the baby came. Got it. Elisa exhaled, thinking she'd survived the interrogation. She had no clue that a certain duke listening nearby had just crumbled into a pile of emotional dust. Riart slumped against the wall, face twisted in pure agony. His inner monologue screamed, I would never kiss someone I didn't love. Not even if it killed me. Elisa stood there helpless, whispering a silent, I'm sorry, to the broken man. Meanwhile, cut to the princess's chambers at midnight. A wasted drunk stumbled in, barely staying on his feet. The moment he saw her, the venting began. Apparently Riart had absolutely roasted him earlier. He'd tried to donate the surplus event budget to the emperor, only to get brutally ghosted. Hearing this, the princess's expression darkened. She exploded, cursing Riart and trashing Elisa. She was desperate to humble that power couple, and look at this fate just handed her a loaded gun. The butler chimed in. A viscount had stopped by earlier. Drunk guy waved it off annoyed. Since that guy's business deals were always total flops, he grabbed the princess ready to pass out when a light bulb suddenly flickered on. The Viscount did pitch something. Something he couldn't sell because of the Oberon family. A wicked, twisted grin crept across the drunk's face. Payback time. Fast forward, Foundation Day Festival arrived in a blink. The Holy Temple was packed with commoners and elites, but Elisa's instincts screamed danger. She clocked Marquis Devon standing by the princess. He'd brought a squad of over 10 knights. Weird. For a chill event like this one, or 2 bodyguards was standard. She brushed it off, trying to relax. Inside the massive sanctuary, the vibe died fast. The high priest droned on for 2 straight hours. A total snooze fest. It wasn't just her. Half the crowd was fighting, gravity heads bobbing. Elisa figured the upcoming play would be just as dull. She was dead wrong. The play dropped a massive lore bomb about Elisa's true origins. The story flashed back to the Age of Demons. The goddess split her power among 3 children, founding 3 legendary bloodlines. They united to tank the Demon King and save humanity, but the big bad was too OP. The 3 leaders were losing hope. Just when it looked like game over, the royal family stepped in wielding the Scarlet Flame. With that firepower, the alliance finally stood a chance. They crushed the Demon King and saved the world, but peace was short-lived. The demons trapped in the corrupted lands surged back, gaining strength. To stop them, the golden-haired head of the house made the ultimate play. He sacrificed himself for the first emperor, creating the Purification Lake right in the middle of the corruption. Elisa always thought this was just a fairy tale. Propaganda. After all, history is written by the winners. But at the mention of the Purification Lake, something snapped inside her. It hit a nerve. Tears streamed down her face uncontrollably, like she knew the martyr personally. Like they shared a soul. Get it together, Elisa, it's just a show, Riart whispered comfortingly. It's okay, it's not real. But the second he shut his mouth, the nightmare went live. Crash, a horde of beasts smashed into the Holy Temple. Wave after wave poured in, chaos erupted. Screams, Riart gripped his wife tight, looking for an exit. But his men reported they were overwhelmed. Fighting was suicide, they had to hide. Now, they fell back to a safe zone, but the defense was a joke. The Holy Knights were pitifully understaffed. Elisa watched in horror as commoner kids were cornered by the magic beasts, seconds away from being slaughtered. She yanked Riart's arm, tears in her eyes. Go save them, please. Riart hesitated. His priority was her, but Elisa refused to let those kids die on her watch. As the conflict tore at him, Thompson stepped up. Go, my lord. We'll guard the Duchess with our lives. That sealed it. Riart made the hard call. Reluctantly releasing his wife's hand, he shifted into combat mode. Elisa, I'll be right back. He vanished in a blur, reappearing instantly beside the kids, ready to unleash hell. That massive raptor let out a dying screech echoing through the air. Usually these magical beasts were total pushovers, but Thompson felt a chill down his spine. Something was off. These peaceful creatures typically chill in the forest and never stray far. But now they were swarming the city, hunting humans in a frenzy. Just 1 second of lost focus and disaster struck. A giant avian beast dive-bombed straight for his wife. Thompson sliced the monster in half midair instantly, but another one plummeted from the sky like a missile. Elisa froze, looking like a helpless chick about to get wrecked. No choice. Thompson threw his own body in the line of fire to shield her. A scream ripped through the chaos. Riart's gut twisted bad vibes, instant alert. He whipped his head around and saw the horror unfolding. No, don't you dare. He went feral. Suddenly, a vision of a silver-haired woman flashed in his mind. She was fading away, reaching out as a black shadow loomed. Please don't leave me. His outstretched hand synced perfectly with the shadow in his vision. Boom. Dark energy exploded from his body like a shockwave. Screaming Elisa's name, he blasted a massive sphere of lethal darkness right from his palm. Instant KO. Every single magical beast dropped from the sky, hitting the dirt simultaneously. Elisa was shook. How did the monsters just drop dead? She looked up confused only to see her husband, shrouded in black aura, collapsing right towards her. She didn't know what this dark vibe was, but it looked like it was eating him alive. No way she was letting this happen. She grabbed him in a tight hug. Riart snapped out of it. Suddenly, her hands glowed with blinding light, but in the chaos, nobody even clocked it. Tears streamed down her face. Thankfully, Riart was just a bit woozy, but Elisa was still freaking out. You wiped out the beasts, but that dark aura. Riart could feel her trembling with anxiety. He pulled her close. I'm good, really. Meanwhile, the Emperor was stressing hard. How did these monsters breach the defenses? And on Foundation Day, total PR nightmare. As Emperor, he had to answer to the public, and his migraine was hitting different. He was so clueless, he missed the smirk on the guy next to him, and actually thanked the snake. Without you, we'd be toast. Thanks for getting us back in one piece. Marquis Devon acted all concerned about the people, but he shot the princess a look that screamed, "You're up." Oh, right, my uncle made this new perfume that repels monsters. Devon acted like the thought just popped into his head. He whipped out the tiny fancy bottle, a literal lifesaver. The emperor heard this and thought it was genius. I mean, he almost just died, so he was sold. He greenlit mass production on the spot, but Devon, drunk on the win, wasn't done yet. Someone's got to take the fall for today's mess. Capital security is totally on the Duke of Luberlin. The emperor wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, but he loved starting drama. And a chance to roast Luberlin. He was all in. He praised the Marquis for speaking facts. He summoned the Duke to the palace for tomorrow. God, that villainous smirk was so punchable. Meanwhile, at the Holy Temple, Elisa was a nervous wreck replaying Riart's dark energy explosion in her head. But Riart had to stay behind at the temple solo just in case the monsters came back for round 2. The Pope had the whole place on lockdown with a barrier. Elisa knew she'd just be in the way if she stayed. They shared a heartbreaking goodbye hug. The Pope watched them looking like he knew way too many secrets but kept his mouth shut. Time for healing. But the second the Pope used holy power, Riart writhed in agony. Wisps of darkness leaked from his skin. The Pope was stunned. What the heck? He pulled up a chair to get the real tea, Riart confessed. I hit up the contaminated canyon 3 months ago. Probably caught the bug then. But the Pope knew better. This was straight up evil energy, and it wasn't normal. It felt exactly like what he felt back then. And the worst part, this evil vibe had already seeped into the cracks of Riart's soul. Trying to purify it with holy power would just torture him again. Even the Pope couldn't multitask healing and holding the barrier at the same time. So rain check on the healing. He cleared a little bit of it, so Riart should be safe-ish for now. But to keep him from going berserk again, he needs to stay far away from his wife. After Riart left, the Pope got deep in thought. That power the young Duchess just unleashed. He recognized that aura instantly. It was the unmistakable sacred signature of the Zelt bloodline. But Elisa, her family had zero connection to the Zelts, yet you can't fake that kind of raw energy. She had to be some long-lost cousin from a branch family. That was the only logical explanation. But then, why did his mind instantly flash back to his late wife? The memories hit him like a truck. When they found her, she was barely 7 months along. The doctors were blunt in that state. The baby didn't stand a ghost of a chance, but he refused to accept it. He traced her every step, praying for a miracle, only to stumble upon a tiny, heartbreaking grave. But without a body to bury, a delusional part of him had spent years clinging to the hope that his child was still out there somewhere. He felt like absolute trash. Meanwhile, back at the estate, Elisa was back on her feet and connecting the dots. This monster invasion wasn't random nature, it was a hit job. And the target, it was Riart. Barely 24 hours since the attack, she rang the bell. She needed a squad to scour the forest as soon as possible. But before she could move, Annie burst into the room, screaming, "Madam," like the house was on fire. Clutching some new products she just bought. Supposedly it was a miracle cure that repelled monsters. One look at the flimsy little bottle and Elisa knew it was garbage, probably snake oil, but then she flipped it over. There, stamped right on the bottom, was an official royal seal. She was so furious she almost laughed. Monsters attacked the capital, and on the exact same day someone's conveniently selling a solution. It was an insult to her intelligence. Right on cue, her assistant walked in. No time to waste. Get an investigation team to the forest. Now. While she was making moves, Riart was facing the music in court. The emperor was livid, ready to take his head off. I put you in charge of capital security. You betrayed my trust. This bloodbath is on you. It looked like Riart was about to go down for this. But then, hold up, your majesty. Riart coolly raised a hand and signaled his aide. The guy walked in carrying the evidence. 2 ordinary-looking monster eggs. The emperor scoffed. What does this have to do with your failure? Everything, Riart shot back. These eggs belong in the deep forest, yet we found them planted right in the Holy Temple's garden. It's obvious. This wasn't a random attack. It was staged. Someone orchestrated this chaos, and only one person walked away with a profit. The Viscount selling that perfume. He lured the monsters in just to sell his bogus repellent. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Wait, isn't that Marquis Devon's Uncle Devon didn't expect to get doxxed that fast? He doubled down, screaming that Riart was slandering him. 2 eggs prove nothing. But Riart shut him down with the next line. The day before the festival, the Viscount rented a fleet of carriages. We analyzed the mud on the wheels. It matches the forest soil perfectly. Devon started sweating. Total coincidence, Duke, you're reaching. Riart gave a cold smirk. Funny, because I checked the records. The Viscount was drowning in debt from his inventions. But 5 minutes after meeting Marquis Devon, suddenly he had cash to burn on rentals. Devon kept gaslighting, so Riart played his ace. Guards dragged in the captured Viscount Magetta. Riart tossed a ledger to the emperor. Here's the paper trail. Every dirty transaction between them. The emperor asked one simple question, and the Viscount folded like a cheap chair, dropping to his knees. I was tricked. He made me do it. Immediately, the Marquis turned on his own uncle. You liar. Don't drag me into this. Talk about a toxic family. The emperor was mad, sure. He just wanted this over with. He ordered the Marquis to merely pay a fine for damages. Riart couldn't believe his ears. Objection. The emperor waved him off, trying to look like a benevolent ruler. I'm showing mercy. Besides, were any commoners really hurt? Riart stood there stunned. Over 10 innocent people were dead, but clearly their lives meant nothing to the crown. So Riart changed tactics. He accused the Marquis of endangering the Emperor's life, high treason. Suddenly, the casualty count didn't matter. The Emperor turned red, wanting to punch someone. He had no choice but to agree. The Duke is right. After all, the whole court was on Riart's side. Marquis Devon got cancelled, hard, title stripped, divorced, the whole 9 yards. The tea was spilled all over the front pages. Same day major mood kill. Elisa should be celebrating, but the second they got back from the palace, Riart went full hermit mode, locked himself in the tower to nerd out over ancient scrolls. Zero luck on the dark energy cure. So frustrating. Imagine missing his kid's birth. He's spiraling, thinking of Elisa, when suddenly, crash. The window shatters into a million pieces. Turns out Elisa missed her man so bad, she went on a midnight vandalism spree. Riart looks down, sees his pregnant wifey, and nearly has a heart attack. He thinks it's a legit emergency. Nope. She casually whips out a notebook like, hey, you bored up there? Need anything? He shakes his head. Total lie. He's not the mushy type, but being away from her. It's pure torture. She flips the page. Getting you out soon. Hang tight. That silent support hit different. She literally broke in to vibe check him. He cracks a soft smile. Truth is, that tower is miserable. And the research is a bust. Then she lifts the notebook again. Miss you. Baby misses daddy. Boom. Right in the feels. Riart freezes for a second. A paper airplane glides down. Miss you guys too. He even doodled a sad puppy on it. Stop, that's adorable. Elisa lights up. Totally worth the property damage. Distance is romantic and all, but she needs him close. Meanwhile, at the Holy Temple, the Pope is spiraling. He saw the Duchess use that blue holy power and he's suspicious. That energy is exclusive to the Zelt bloodline. He calls in a favor for a paternity test kit. He could solve this mystery right now, but he hesitates. He's terrified his hope will crumble. But whoever she is, if she's got the family juice, he has a duty to figure out where it came from. He grabs a strand of golden hair he managed to snag. He drops it into a clear vial. He meant to test distant relatives, but instinct takes over. He yanks out his own hair. Here's the deal. If the blood matches, the potion glows blue. If not, it turns into a rock. He braces for disappointment, but then his jaw hits the floor. The liquid turns a stunning snowy blue. No way. The Duchess. She's his literal daughter. That radiant blonde hair, those emerald eyes. Just like his late wife predicted. Half me, half you, and we'll love her to pieces. Right, but then she died. And their daughter vanished. He didn't know if she was even alive. Now, the dam breaks. Years of guilt and longing turn into happy tears. Her wish actually came true. The next day, Riart shows up at the temple for a cleanse, desperate to wrap this up. He's stressing about Elisa's heavy belly, but she's stubborn. She insists on waiting at the temple. They're inseparable like that. Riart sighs and follows the Holy Father. The healing is quick. His shoulder feels great, but the vibe is off. The Pope is acting super salty today. Dead serious face, lecturing him about health, guilt-tripping him for worrying the fam. Even starts grilling him on prenatal education. Riart's like, is this guy for real? He thinks he's finally free to see his wife. Nope. 2 sentences and the Pope interrupts. Duchess, a word, walk with me. Riart doesn't want to let go, but you don't say no to the Pope. Seeing the couple so in love leaves the Pope speechless. He takes Elisa to a quiet garden. So, how much do you know about holy power? Elisa thinks for a sec. It's the Zelt family signature. Only they can wield it. The Pope nods. He gets an idea, points to some dead flowers. Humor me. Imagine watering these with your hands. Elisa's confused but rolls with it. She closes her eyes, manifesting water. Suddenly, her hands glow blue and energy gushes out like a fountain. Splash. Pure, purifying magic. She's done it on accident before. But this is the first time she really sees it. The connection is undeniable. The Pope knows. He desperately wanted to crush his daughter in a bear hug, but he froze, keeping his distance. If his real family were still breathing, maybe this reality wouldn't hit so hard. Elisa stumbled back, her brain completely short-circuiting. Her biological father was literally the Pope. For someone who got isekai'd into a novel, the truth finally slapped her in the face. The entire plot she memorized. Total trash. The home where she thought the OG protagonist grew up had absolutely zero connection to the real story. Elisa was spiraling. The original main character was a fake version of her, and the biggest plot twist, Riart had been sitting on this secret the whole time. Hearing the Pope claim her as his flesh and blood wrecked her. She didn't know whether to cry or celebrate. After all, she was just an imposter soul, borrowing this life. Thank the gods, the Pope was a total green flag, gentle, patient, demanding nothing from her. He just hoped she'd drop by the Holy Temple occasionally, watching his lonely silhouette fade into the distance. A heavy ache settled in her chest. Even later, while her husband read bedtime stories to her and the baby, she was zoning out. Hey babe, what's wrong? Riart's anxiety spiked instantly. What did the Pope tell you? Spill the tea. She dropped the bomb. The Pope is her dad, and she's got holy buffs that make her immune to dark energy corruption. She expected Riart to lose it, but he only looked shocked for a split second. The guy had already connected the dots. Ansel had actually brought receipts earlier, a mysterious photo found during the villa renovation, and some shady doctor's testimony. The real Elisa died at 8 years old. Riart had been eating himself up with guilt, terrified the truth would break his wife, so he buried the secret. He even investigated the sacred tree forest where Grandpa supposedly found her, but his scouts found absolutely nothing. Zero trace of Elisa's existence in that entire area. So, the million-dollar question remained, where was the OG protagonist hiding before age 12? Elisa was deep in thought when her husband asked the big question, how does it feel finding your bio dad? She froze completely. Honestly, she had no clue how to process parental affection. Her past life memories were a horror show of cold shoulders and trauma. Parents were just monsters in her closet. She didn't understand healthy parental love, but here she was feeling unworthy, staring at a powerful, respected, and gentle father figure. Her heart was a mess, but her gut said he was a good person. She wanted to bridge that gap to really know him. It was the first time she felt this spark of hope. Okay, let's go visit my father-in-law tomorrow. Snuggling into her husband's warm embrace, the panic finally melted away. This moment, pure bliss. Meanwhile, the Pope, acting like he had telepathy, was already pacing at the temple entrance since dawn. His aides caught him acting suspicious, waiting for someone. Flustered, he almost bolted out of pure awkwardness. Too late. He spun around just as the announcer boomed. The young Duchess of Luberlin has arrived. His face lit up like a Christmas tree. But once they sat down, total silence. Just two introverts staring at the floor, sneaking side glances while the other wasn't looking. The family resemblance was uncanny. Riart realized he had to save the vibe, breaking the ice by calling him father-in-law repeatedly. He even apologized for not visiting yesterday. The Pope looked mortified, blaming himself for dropping the parent bomb so abruptly. He was just grateful they showed up. But then the worry crept into his voice. Young Duchess, how have you survived all these years? Elisa panicked. Young Duchess and you. The formal titles hit her like a bucket of ice water. The word father was stuck in her throat, too embarrassing to say, but she was terrified of crushing his fragile heart. Seeing her head drop in panic, her dad immediately stepped in to diffuse the tension. It's just a title, sweetie. Don't stress. Call me whatever feels right. This man was almost too wholesome. She'd never felt unconditional love like this. The problem, her memory card was blank before age 12. The book lore didn't cover this. I only remember a carriage accident as a kid, she admitted. When I woke up, I was already at the Luberlin estate. Then she married Riart, and her current life began. The couple shared a loving look, but the Pope's heart was hammering against his ribs. A carriage accident? That sounded suspicious. Riart wanted to get the facts straight before explaining. Only the late Duke knew the real origin story. So it was complicated. But hey, Elisa was thriving now, and relief washed over the Pope's face. Elisa, thank you for being alive. His hands shook violently as he spoke, and Elisa caught every tremor. After a long hesitation, she finally smiled with her eyes. It's a pleasure to meet you, even if I'm a little late saying it. Squinting his eyes, the Pope froze dead in his tracks. It was like seeing a ghost, his late wife, standing right there in front of him. A memory flashed back. We'll love her with everything we have. His wife had sworn she'd move mountains for their daughter, and man, she was absolutely right. Because right now, he felt that exact same fire. He'd conquer the entire globe just to see his little girl smile, fresh off their emotional reunion. He'd picked up this stunning gold leaf hair comb studded with pearls. It was meant to be her first real gift, but suddenly panic set in. Would this be too much pressure? Better sleep on it. He left the treasure on his desk and bailed, but literally 1 second later, little Leon popped into the frame. The kid was decked out in a tiny gardener outfit. Too cute. He was on a mission to drag the Holy Father to see his flower patch. But the office was a ghost town. Didn't matter though, because something shiny caught his eye, that golden comb resting on the desk. Those gold leaves were covered in these little white spheres. So shiny. Suddenly, Leon remembered something his sister had told him once. Those white things, flower seeds. And if you plant them in the dirt, they multiply. Leon went full hype mode. He was going to grow a whole forest of flowers for the Holy Father. But as high as he was riding now, the crash was coming hard. Meanwhile, the Pope took a lap and flipped his script. Who cares if she likes it or not? He had to at least shoot his shot. But when he walked back in, total disaster. The comb was there, but it was just naked gold leaves. Every single pearl was MIA. Spotting Leon, bolting for the door, the Pope instantly cracked the case. The kid did it. When he found out those expensive gems were currently buried in the dirt, the man nearly passed out cold. He'd never been this flabbergasted in his entire life. Just then, Elisa pulled up to the Holy Temple. Leon had promised he was decorating the garden today, but she'd searched everywhere with zero luck. Turns out he was hiding indoors the whole time. The second Leon locked eyes with her, the dam broke. He started bawling his eyes out uncontrollably. Elisa thought something tragic went down, but nope, the kid had just accidentally trashed the gift Dad bought for her. The Pope was stressing, realizing parenting is essentially hard mode. He just explained to Leon that it was a hair accessory, not magical flower seeds. But once the kid realized he'd wrecked a present for his big sister, the waterworks got worse. And right at that chaos, his staff interrupted with some official business. Once he dealt with that headache, he rushed back to comfort the little guy. He threw open the door, expecting tears, but instead, Leon was beaming with joy. And the real shocker was Elisa. She was already rocking the comb in her hair. "Leon and I fixed it up. How's it look good? Thanks for the gift, Father. I love it." The Pope was floored. All that stress just evaporated instantly. For the first time, Elisa actually felt that genuine dad-love connection, and she kept touching the comb like it was precious. Seeing her family so happy, she wanted to return the favor, so she grabbed Annie and headed downtown to a jewelry spot to pick out a men's brooch. Since she's a high-ranking duchess, she obviously got VIP treatment in a private room to shop in peace. She let Annie wander around the shop, not expecting any drama to go down. But drama found them. Annie tripped over her own skirt and almost face-planted. Luckily, a pair of big hands caught her, right by the waist. "You okay, miss?" It was some handsome-looking dude. She was about to say thanks when she felt his fingers creeping where they shouldn't be. Instant red flags. This gentleman flashed a gross predatory smirk. His mouth was asking if she was hurt, but his hands were roaming. Annie, being super innocent, froze up in terror, stuttering and unable to form words. "Let her go." Elisa stormed in like a boss, tearing into the guy for having zero shame and daring to grope a girl in public. Hearing the accusation, the blonde guy panicked about his reputation. He snapped, claiming he was just checking if she was injured. "Yeah, right. But unwanted touching. That's assault, bro." The blonde creep didn't expect Elisa to come at him with facts. He just wanted to hit on a girl, and now he was getting roasted. Seeing the little maid shaking in fear, he tried to gaslight her. "Did I make you uncomfortable?" He was betting she was too terrified to speak up. If she stayed quiet, he walks free. And honestly, Annie was paralyzed with fear. But then she found her voice. "Don't touch me, you pervert." She screamed it, and suddenly the blonde guy was being side-eyed by the whole room. Elisa immediately broke down the situation to a rushing employee. The guy was livid. Being called a creep was a blow to his ego, but he definitely didn't see what was coming next. The staff actually blocked him and kicked him out. He was stunned. Turns out Elisa way outranked him socially. He had no choice but to leave in a huff, watching Annie sob her heart out as he walked away. Elisa was desperate to figure out which family this guy belonged to. The staffers, sweating bullets, spilled the tea. That's the heir. The next head of the Zelt clan. Elisa froze. That absolute scumbag was her cousin after Annie got harassed by that blonde creep. Elisa had grilled her dad about him, but according to her father, Blondie was a capable and obedient young man. Yeah, right. If she hadn't witnessed the drama yesterday, she might have actually bought it. That guy was either a high-functioning jerk or just really good at managing his scumbag side. She decided to head back and dig deeper, but then she looked up and bam, totally mesmerized. Riart was hanging out with the little lion. That serious broad back of his was actually kind of adorable. Elisa was smiling before she even realized it. "You've got it bad, huh?" Her dad always said you practically glow when you look at the person you love. Her dad, just like the Marchioness, read her like an open book, watching Riart. It finally clicked. She really liked him. If she had any doubts before, they were totally gone now. A wave of calm washed over her. "Elisa, why is your face so red?" Her husband's voice snapped her out of her little trance. Panicking that he'd figure it out, she whipped her head around and bolted from the temple. Riart stood there, totally lost. Did I mess up? After getting a pep talk from his father-in-law, he finally scrambled after her, the two silhouettes, one chasing the other. Made the Pope sigh. He had to admit being young must be nice, but he didn't expect that later that night. Elisa would try to kick her husband out. Riart was confused all over again. "So, can I sleep on the couch?" "No, go to another room." If she didn't banish him, she wouldn't be able to stop herself from jumping his bones. Oh God, she could already picture herself losing all control, but someone was still standing there pouting, insisting he finish reading the bedtime story before leaving. Seeing that shirt with the neckline plunging way lower than usual, she blushed hard and shut him down. "If I annoyed you, I can apologize." Riart's puppy dog look was a total trap. She hesitated for like 2 seconds. "Fine, let's just sleep together." Watching him speed make the bed, she kept telling herself, "He's my husband, so it doesn't matter if we do that right." She couldn't hold back the thirst any longer. She stood on her tiptoes, grabbed his face, and cut to the next morning. Riart was freaking out on the inside. Since she was pregnant, he'd always been super careful. He was feeling guilty and conflicted, but breakfast threw him a total curveball. His wife was telling him to eat up with this weird, suggestive look on her face. Seeing that, he instantly knew what she meant. She thought he didn't have enough stamina. The more he thought about it, the madder he got. So the second she finished eating, he scooped her up in his arms. "I think we need to clear up this misunderstanding." Wifey. That dangerous vibe, oh my god, Elisa was actually loving it. But the honeymoon phase didn't last long. She arrived at the holy temple just like any other day, but she wasn't expecting everyone to be giving her the side eye. Some people were even whispering right in front of her face. She had to ask the young priest to figure out what was up. Turns out someone had started spreading rumors that she and the Pope were having an affair. She couldn't believe it. What a trash rumor. Her dad tried to talk to her, but the young priest blocked him. Do you want the gossip to get even worse? As the ugly gossip spread across the entire empire, the Pope felt guilty and ashamed. Even though it broke his heart, his daughter was pregnant, so it was safer if she stayed away from the temple. Just as father and daughter were saying a sad goodbye, Riart showed up. He was supposed to be at the palace, but him being here meant they were talking about it at the palace too. Elisa felt terrible, but Riart, he didn't give a damn. In fact, he had a master plan. He looked at his stunned father-in-law. Are you willing to trust me? 1 week later, at the crown prince's birthday bash, the blonde man became the main character of the night, as the next head of the Zelt family showing up at a royal banquet shook everyone. Word on the street was that the Holy Temple and the royals were totally at war. Since becoming the Pope, the head of Zelt hadn't stepped foot in a royal event. After all that incident happened 20 years ago, but if Cain was here, it meant Zelt was ready to bridge the gap with the royals. Soaking up the attention, Cain looked pretty pleased with himself. He'd purposefully played the rebel against the crown before, just to win over the current leader's trust. With all the messy rumors swirling around Aiden and Elisa, the family was starting to panic, doubting if the big boss could actually hold the throne. That's why Cain was grinding overtime to lock down his spot. 1 week ago, he hit up the crown prince to secure that royal backup. If the prince gave the green light, Aiden's grip on the family would crumble. That invite to the banquet, it was Cain's golden ticket to a takeover. Since the current leader was basically away from keyboard on family business, Cain figured the entire Celti legacy was already in the bag. But then boom, a sudden commotion broke the silence. The Duke and Duchess of Luberlin didn't just walk in, they made a blinding entrance that stopped the show. Elisa wasn't hiding away like a shamed recluse. Nope, she was out there living her best life, chatting up the ladies. The sheer audacity. Cain decided to shoot his shot. Duchess, we meet again. He played the perfect gentleman, but Elisa hit him with the ultimate shade, pretended she didn't even know him. Oh, you're the creep who groped my maid at the jewelry store. Cain tried to stutter out a big misunderstanding defense, but she shut him down. I saw you grab her with my own eyes. Instantly, the crowd started buzzing. The tea was hot, and everyone was sipping. Cain didn't expect her to go full savage mode. Still, he tried to gaslight her, twisting the narrative to save his crumbling rep. Bringing this up just hurts your maid's reputation, doesn't it? Classic manipulation. But Elisa wasn't having it. Why should the victim hide when you are the trash? With just a couple of sentences, she flipped the script and made Cain the laughingstock of the entire party. Just as his brain was short-circuiting trying to find a comeback, the royal family made their grand entrance. He decided to back off the evil witch for now. He had bigger fish to fry. Little did he know, Elisa was about to snatch everything from him. The nobles lined up to drop their birthday swag one by one. Finally, it was the Celti family's turn to shine. But right at the climax, a lackey rushed in with a letter from Papa Aiden. The emperor tried to save it for later, but the messenger insisted. Your Majesty, you need to see this. It's about the successor. The emperor scanned the page and his jaw dropped. Aiden wasn't just saying hi. He was officially stripping Cain of his heir status, effective immediately. And the kicker, he named his daughter Elisa Luberlin as the next head of the house. The emperor's face said it all, and the whole room froze. While everyone else looked confused, Elisa stepped forward, chin up, walking like she already owned the place.